Emma Carter grabbed the arm of a complete stranger and whispered 3 words she had never said to anyone in her life. "Kiss me, please." Her ex-husband was 15 feet away, laughing with the woman he had left her for in the same restaurant at the same charity event, wearing the same smile he once reserved only for her. Emma's chest was caving in. Her hands were trembling. 2 years of rebuilding herself, and all of it collapsed in a single second. The stranger turned slowly, and the entire room went quiet. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story all the way to the end. Drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to Emma, because the man she just grabbed, she had no idea who he was, and that changes everything. The charity event was supposed to be one night away from her apartment, away from the dishes she washed alone, away from the silence she had learned to live inside. Her best friend Maggie had practically dragged her out of the house, standing in Emma's bedroom doorway, with her arms crossed and her voice firm. "You haven't left this apartment except for work and school pickup in 11 days, Maggie said. "That's not living, Emma. That's hiding." "I'm not hiding. I'm resting." "You're disappearing." Maggie dropped a dress onto the bed. Navy blue, simple, elegant. "Wear this. It makes your waist look incredible, and it'll make you feel like a person again." Emma looked at the dress for a long moment. "I don't want to feel like a person. People get hurt." Maggie sat down beside her on the bed and put her hand over Emma's. "You already got hurt. The worst already happened. What's left to be afraid of?" Emma didn't answer, because the honest answer was everything. She was afraid of everything. She was afraid of running into someone who knew about the divorce and watching their face shift into that look, that particular combination of pity and relief that said, "Thank God that's not my life." She was afraid of walking into a room and feeling invisible. She was afraid of walking into a room and being seen. She was afraid of Ryan, not because she still loved him. She had stopped loving Ryan Carter somewhere around the 3rd month after he left, when she finally understood that the man she had grieved wasn't real. He was a version of a person she had invented because she needed to believe she had chosen well. The real Ryan had been slowly emptying their savings account for 8 months before he walked out. The real Ryan had told their daughter Lily, who was 4 years old at the time, that Daddy was going on a long trip and would visit soon. The real Ryan had not visited once in 2 years. No. She wasn't afraid of Ryan because she loved him. She was afraid of him because whenever she saw him, she became the woman he had made her feel like. Small, replaceable, unworthy of a reason. But she put on the dress anyway. Because Maggie was right. The worst had already happened. The restaurant was called Meridian, and it occupied the top 2 floors of a building in the Gold Coast neighborhood that Emma had walked past 100 times without ever imagining she'd be inside. Everything about it was understated in the way that only genuinely expensive things could be. No flashy signs, no loud music, just a quiet authority that said, if you don't already know what this place is, you probably shouldn't be here. Maggie had gotten them invitations through a client, some kind of annual charity auction for a children's hospital foundation. The invitation had a gold-embossed border. Emma had kept it on her kitchen counter for 3 days before tonight, glancing at it occasionally like it was a foreign object from another universe. She felt out of place the moment she walked in. That wasn't unusual. She had felt out of place most places for the last 2 years. But here, the feeling had a specific texture, like she was wearing a costume and everyone else was wearing their actual skin. "Stop doing that," Maggie said through a smile, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server without breaking stride. "Doing what?" "That thing where you look around the room like you're calculating the fastest exit." "I'm just looking around. You're scoping escape routes. Relax, drink something, talk to someone who isn't me." Maggie pressed a glass of champagne into Emma's hand. "You look beautiful. Own it." Emma took a small sip. The champagne was extraordinary, which somehow made her feel worse, like even the sensory experiences in this world were a different caliber than anything she had access to in her regular life. She was beginning to think she could actually survive the evening when she saw him. Ryan. He was near the far end of the room, near the tall windows that overlooked the city, and he was laughing at something the woman beside him had just said. Not politely laughing, genuinely laughing, the kind of full-body laugh Emma had spent years trying to coax out of him. The woman was beautiful in an uncomplicated, effortless way. Long dark hair, a red dress that fit like it had been built specifically for her body, a hand resting on Ryan's arm with the casual ownership of someone who had never once doubted she belonged where she stood. Emma stopped moving. The champagne glass in her hand suddenly weighed about 40 pounds. She knew cognitively that Ryan had moved on. She knew he was with someone. She had heard fragments from mutual acquaintances, had mentally prepared herself for the eventual collision, but nothing had prepared her for the specific violence of actually seeing it, of watching him be happy, of watching him laugh like the life he'd walked away from had never cost him a single night of sleep. "Emma!" Maggie's voice was low and urgent. She had spotted Ryan too. "We can leave, right now. We don't have to." "I'm fine." "You are not fine. Your face has gone completely white." "I'm fine," Emma said again, and her voice came out steadier than she expected, which surprised her. "I just need a minute." She turned away from Ryan before he could look in her direction. She moved through the room without quite knowing where she was going, just putting space between herself and that image. His laugh, her hand, the red dress, all of it burning a hole through Emma's chest like something chemical. She found herself near the edge of the room beside a set of tall windows, and she stopped there and breathed. "You are fine," she told herself. "You rebuilt your life. You work 40 hours a week, and you raise your daughter alone, and you built something from nothing after he took everything. You are fine. He does not get to take this night from you too." But her hands were still shaking. And then someone stepped into her peripheral vision. She turned almost reflexively, and that's when she saw the table. It was positioned slightly apart from the others, not dramatically separate, not cordoned off, but set at a subtle remove that seemed less like accident and more like intention. The kind of distance that said this person chose to be slightly outside the crowd, and the crowd has accepted this. The man sitting there was alone. He wasn't looking at her. He wasn't looking at anyone in particular. He sat with one arm resting along the back of his chair, an untouched glass in front of him, and he was simply present in the room. The way that a significant piece of architecture is present, not demanding attention, but commanding it regardless. Emma noticed several things at once in no particular order, that the people who passed near his table did so with a particular deference that had nothing to do with courtesy and everything to do with instinct. That despite the fact that he was doing nothing and saying nothing, there was a quality to his stillness that made him the most substantial person in the room, and that he was objectively one of the most striking men she had ever seen in her life. None of that was why she walked toward him. She walked toward him because at that exact moment, she heard Ryan's laugh again, closer this time, moving through the room, and something inside her snapped clean in half. 2 years. 2 years of quiet dignity. 2 years of, "I'm fine and we're managing and Lily asks about you sometimes, but she's resilient, and no, I don't need anything from you, Ryan. I've figured it out on my own." 2 years of not letting him see that it had almost destroyed her. 2 years of him getting to move through the world with his beautiful girlfriend and his untroubled laugh, while Emma counted every dollar and held her daughter through nightmares and rebuilt herself piece by piece in an apartment she could barely afford. 2 years. She crossed the distance to the private table without making a conscious decision to do so. The man looked up. His eyes were dark, not dramatically dark, not in the way stories describe, but dark in the way of someone who has spent a great deal of time looking at things most people never see. He looked at her with an expression that was neither welcoming nor unwelcoming. He simply looked at her, which was somehow more unsettling than either. Emma leaned down slightly, not close, but enough to be heard without being overheard, and said, "Kiss me, please." The room didn't stop. Nobody around them paused. The event continued its pleasant murmuring hum. But at that table in that specific square foot of the universe, everything went completely still. The man didn't move. He didn't speak immediately. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read, and she had become very good at reading men, at cataloging their reactions, at predicting the shape of their responses. She couldn't read him at all. "My ex-husband is behind me," Emma said, because the silence needed filling, and she was already in this deep. "He's watching, or he will be soon. I just need him to see that I'm not. I need him to believe that I'm not still the woman he left." A pause. "I know how that sounds," she added. Another pause. Then the man said quietly, "What's your name?" She hadn't expected that. She'd expected refusal or amusement, or the particular male discomfort of a woman creating a scene. She hadn't expected him to ask her name. "Emma." He considered her for one more moment. Then he stood. He was taller than she'd registered from across the room. And when he stood, the quality of his presence intensified in a way that she felt physically, a kind of gravitational shift, subtle and unmistakable. He didn't say anything else. He simply reached up and touched her face gently with a deliberateness that was more intimate than anything hurried could have been, and he kissed her. It was not a performance. That was the thing that caught her completely off guard. She had expected something performative, a kiss designed to be seen angled toward the audience with the energy of a strategic maneuver. That was what she'd asked for after all. Theater. Show. Make my ex believe I'm not broken. This was not that. It was brief, careful, and entirely devastatingly real. When he pulled back, Emma had to remind herself where she was. He was looking at her again with that expression she couldn't decode. "Did it work?" he asked. She turned slowly, carefully, and looked across the room. Ryan was staring at her. For the first time in 2 years, Ryan Carter was looking at Emma like she had surprised him. Like something about the world had rearranged itself without his permission. The woman in the red dress was saying something to him, and he wasn't responding. He was just staring at Emma. Something loosened in Emma's chest. Something that had been clenched tight for so long she'd stopped noticing the tension. "Yes," she said quietly. "It worked." She turned back to the man at the table. "Thank you. I'm sorry, for I shouldn't have done that. I'll go." "Sit down," he said. She blinked. "I'm sorry." "You're trembling," he said. Not unkindly, simply as a statement of fact. "And your ex-husband is going to watch where you go next. Sit down and have a drink." Emma almost refused. The instinct was immediate. She didn't want to owe anything to anyone, didn't want to accept help that came with an invisible price tag attached, didn't want to stay in a situation she didn't fully understand. Those instincts had been sharpened by hard experience, and she trusted them. But her legs were still unsteady, and Ryan was still watching. She sat down. His name was Alexander Romano. She didn't know that immediately he told her after about 10 minutes after the server had brought her a glass of water she hadn't asked for, but needed desperately after the worst of the trembling had passed. He offered it the way you offer your name to someone who has already done something unexpected with you, as a formality that felt slightly beside the point. "Emma Carter," she said. "For about 11 more months, then I'm going back to Emma Hale." She said it without thinking, and then felt immediately self-conscious. "Sorry, oversharing." "You're not," Alexander said. He had sat back down across from her, and his manner had settled into something she could only describe as considered like someone who was accustomed to taking in a great deal of information and was currently taking in her. "You're a little in shock." "I'm fine. You said that to yourself 4 times before you came to this table. I heard 2 of them." Emma stared at him. "You were watching me." "The room," he said. "I watch rooms." She wasn't sure what to do with that, so she let it go. "Why did you say yes?" He considered the question. "You didn't pretend." "What do you mean?" "Most people want something from someone in this room tonight," he said. "They approach with a reason that isn't their real reason. You walked up to me with exactly what you wanted, and exactly why you wanted it." He picked up his glass finally and took a slow drink. "That's rarer than you'd think." Emma looked at him across the table and tried to figure out who she was talking to. There was something about the way the room organized itself around him, not with any particular theater, but in the small, constant ways that people adjust their behavior near someone they're aware of. Servers checked the table more frequently. Guests who passed nearby did so with a particular quality of not quite looking that was itself a form of looking. A man near the entrance had glanced toward Alexander's table twice in the last 10 minutes in a way that didn't read as curiosity, but as something more structured, more watchful. "Who are you?" Emma asked. Something shifted in his expression, not wariness exactly, more like recognition. "I have a few answers to that question," he said. "Which one would you like?" "The true one." That almost made him smile, not quite, but almost. "Alexander Romano," he said. "I have business interests in logistics, real estate, and private finance." A pause. "Among other things." The pause. She noticed the pause, but she was still settling down from the adrenaline of the last 20 minutes, and she didn't push it. "Do people usually do what I just did?" she asked instead. "No." "Were you angry?" He thought about it. "No." "Then what?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Curious," he said finally. They talked for 45 minutes. Emma could not have predicted that. She had imagined a brief, awkward exchange. "Thank you, I'm sorry, goodbye." She hadn't imagined conversation. But Alexander Romano asked questions that were precise and genuinely interested, rather than polite and performative. And Emma, who had spent 2 years speaking in the careful, truncated language of someone managing other people's concern for her, found herself answering with more honesty than she'd intended. She told him about Lily. Not much. She was protective of Lily always, but she mentioned her daughter mentioned that she was 6 now and had recently developed a passionate interest in volcanoes, which she had mispronounced as volcanoes until 3 weeks ago. Alexander listened to this with the same quality of attention he'd given everything else. "How old were you when she was born?" he asked. 22. We got married young." She paused. "Too young probably, but I don't regret her. I'd do it again knowing how everything turned out as long as I ended up with her." "And him?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "No, I wouldn't do him again." "What happened?" "He left," she said simply. "And when he left, I found out he hadn't been honest with me about a lot of things for a long time." She turned her glass slowly between her hands. "Money, mostly. He borrowed from accounts that weren't only his. Moved things around." She shook her head. "I should have seen it earlier. I've spent a lot of time wondering why I didn't." "Because you trusted him," Alexander said. Not sympathetically. Not with that softening quality that made Emma feel like an object of pity. Simply as an observation. "I did," Emma said. "That was the problem." "It's not a character flaw," he said. "It felt like one. Most virtues do when someone uses them against you." Emma looked at him. She wasn't sure she had ever heard anyone describe it that way, had never heard the particular ache of betrayal framed as something that located the fault in the person who had exploited rather than the person who had believed. It was such a small reframe said so matter-of-factly, and it did something strange to the pressure she had been carrying in her chest for 2 years. "You sound like you know something about that," she said carefully. Alexander picked up his glass again. "We all know something about that," he said. "Some of us learn it earlier than others." It was near the end of the evening when the complication found her. Maggie had come to check on Emma twice, each time retreating with a slightly stunned expression and a barely suppressed smile that Emma understood meant she would be interrogated thoroughly the moment they were alone. Emma had spent the better part of the last hour in a state of suspension. Not happy exactly, not the manufactured happiness of, "I'm fine," but something more neutral and strange. Something that felt almost like being genuinely present in a room for the first time in a long time. Then Ryan appeared. He didn't approach quietly. Ryan had never done anything quietly. It was one of the things she'd found charming about him early on, and exhausting about him later. He moved through spaces like he had a right to them, with the easy entitlement of someone who had never seriously considered the possibility of being unwelcome. He walked up to the table. He looked at Alexander first, a look Emma recognized as Ryan performing an assessment of a rival, which he'd always done in the specific way of a man who believed his own instincts were reliable, and then he looked at Emma. "Em," he said. She hated that he still called her that. It felt like an intrusion. "Ryan," she said. His eyes moved between her and Alexander with studied casualness. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I could say the same." "Who's your friend?" Ryan asked, and the word friend had a particular inflection, slightly derisive, slightly questioning, doing a lot of work that he hadn't put into actual words. Emma felt Alexander's attention shift. Not visibly. He didn't move, didn't straighten, didn't do anything that could be cataloged as a reaction. But she felt the quality of his stillness change. "Alexander Romano," Emma said. "We were having a conversation, Ryan." "Romano." Ryan repeated the name with a slight frown, the frown of someone encountering a word they almost recognize. "Do you work in finance?" "Among other things," Alexander said. His voice had not changed. It was the same measured, unhurried quality it had carried all evening. But something about it was different now. Emma noticed something subtly, unmistakably different, the way a room changes quality when the temperature drops by a few degrees. Ryan either missed it or chose to ignore it. He had always been better at asserting himself than at reading rooms. "Huh." Ryan looked at Emma. "I wanted to come say hello. Victoria mentioned she thought she recognized you." Victoria. The woman in the red dress had a name. Emma processed this with a calm she was slightly proud of. "Well," Emma said, "you've said hello." Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. "How's Lily?" "She's wonderful," Emma said. "Growing. Happy." A pause deliberate. The kind of happy that comes from stability. Ryan absorbed this. "Emma." "It was good to see you, Ryan." She said it with finality. "Give Victoria my best." Ryan stood there for one more moment, in which Emma could feel him deciding whether to push the way he always used to push when he sensed she was pulling away the way a man does who has mistaken access for affection. Then something made him glance at Alexander again. Whatever he saw there, it settled the question. "Yeah," Ryan said quietly. "It was good to see you." He left. Emma breathed. "That was handled," Alexander said after a moment. "Don't compliment me for managing my ex-husband," Emma said. "That's a very low bar." "Most people find that bar surprisingly difficult," he said. Emma laughed an actual laugh, short and involuntary, which surprised her. She pressed her fingers to her mouth like she could take it back. Alexander was watching her with that expression again. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. But there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Something quiet and almost wondering. Maggie found her 20 minutes later. "Emma Carter," Maggie said, sitting down in the chair Ryan had just vacated without asking permission. "You need to explain what is happening right now, using small words." "Nothing is happening." "You kissed a stranger." "I asked a stranger to kiss me. That's different." "How is that different?" "Agency," Emma said. "I still had agency." Maggie pressed her palms flat on the table and leaned forward. "He is the most magnetic person in this entire room, and he has been looking at you like you're a puzzle he wants to solve for the last hour." "Who is he?" "Alexander Romano," Emma said. "He has business interests in logistics, real estate, and private finance." Maggie stared at her. "Among other things," Emma added. "Among other..." Maggie stopped. Her expression changed. Something moved across her face. Recognition, then uncertainty, then a very specific kind of concern. "What?" Emma asked. "Nothing," Maggie said quickly, too quickly. "Maggie, it's probably nothing. There are a lot of people named Alexander Romano in Chicago. It's probably..." She stopped again. "What do you know?" Emma said. Maggie looked around the table, then back at Emma. "Do you remember my client? The one who invited us tonight? Marcus Brennan. The real estate developer. Right. 2 months ago, Marcus mentioned a name. He mentioned it once when he was talking about a deal that had fallen through in a bad way. He seemed frightened, Emma. Which was strange because Marcus isn't frightened of much. Maggie's voice dropped. The name he mentioned was Romano. Emma looked across the room to where Alexander was now speaking with a man in a dark suit, speaking quietly with the contained purposefulness of someone conducting actual business at what everyone else understood to be a social event. What kind of bad? Emma asked. The kind where Marcus said he was grateful the deal had fallen through before he'd signed anything, Maggie said. The kind where he lowered his voice to tell me and then immediately changed the subject. Emma was quiet. I'm not saying anything definitive, Maggie said. I'm just saying, who is he really? Who are you? Emma had asked him that. I have a few answers to that question. Which one would you like, the true one? And he had told her about logistics, real estate, private finance, among other things. She had heard the pause. She had noticed the pause. She had filed it away and not asked about it. Emma looked at her best friend across the table and thought about the way the room had organized itself around Alexander Romano all evening. The deference in the small gestures of strangers. The man near the entrance who had watched the table. Ryan's particular retreat. I don't know, Emma said honestly. Not completely. Are you going to find out? Emma thought about the kiss. Not the performance of it, the real thing underneath. The careful deliberateness of it. The way he had touched her face like he was making a decision. She thought about what he'd said most virtues do when someone uses them against you. She thought about the pause. I think so, she said. She found him near the elevator bank, alone, clearly preparing to leave. I want to ask you something, Emma said, walking up to him with the same quality of directness that had started everything an hour ago. He turned. He had put on his jacket, which did something efficient and devastating to his posture. Ask. When I asked you who you were earlier, you answered about business, logistics, real estate. She met his eyes. What did you leave out? Something happened in his expression. A very slight recalibration. What makes you think I left something out? Because I noticed the pause, Emma said. And because the way this room has been responding to you all night is not the way a room responds to a businessman. Silence. You're perceptive, he said. I've had a lot of practice, she said. I learned to pay attention when someone isn't fully answering. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. What do you do for work, Emma? That's not an answer. It's a consideration, he said. Who you are determines what kind of answer you should have. She held his gaze. I'm an account coordinator at a marketing firm. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I drive a 2019 Civic, and I'm a month ahead on my rent for the first time since my divorce. I am not connected to anything you might be connected to. I have no one to tell, and I am not asking because I want to use the information. A pause. I'm asking because you kissed me because I asked you to, and I'd like to know who I asked. The elevator arrived. He didn't get in. Walk with me, he said. They walked out of the restaurant and into the cold Chicago night, and standing on the sidewalk with the city spreading in every direction around them, Alexander Romano told her enough. Not everything. She understood that everything was not a thing. He gave to people he had known for 2 hours, and she respected that, even as she registered the precise shape of what he wasn't saying. But he told her enough. The Romano family had been in Chicago for 3 generations. His grandfather had built the foundation. His father had expanded it. Alexander had inherited it at 27 when his father died. Not cleanly, not happily, not in the way a person would choose. He ran it now. He was in the process, slowly, of redirecting pieces of it toward legitimate enterprises. What does that mean? Emma asked. The foundation. What does that mean exactly? He looked at her. You already know. And she did. She had known since Maggie's face changed in the restaurant. She had known since she'd noticed the room. You're not going to tell me directly, she said. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact she was laying out. Not tonight, he said. Tonight I'll tell you that I'm not someone you should trust quickly, and that asking me for what you asked me tonight was a significant accident. You didn't have to say yes. No, he agreed. I didn't. Emma pulled her coat tighter against the cold. Why did you? The question landed between them in the night air. Alexander looked out at the street for a moment. When he looked back at her, something in his expression was more unguarded than anything she had seen from him inside. Because you were honest, he said simply. And because you were standing there holding yourself together with everything you had, and you didn't pretend otherwise. You just asked for what you needed. A pause. I don't meet many people like that. Emma didn't know what to say to that, so she said, I should go find my friend. Yes, he said. Thank you, she said, for all of it. Emma. His voice stopped her. She turned. The account at your firm, the one your ex-husband emptied? He said it quietly, precisely. Be careful if you're ever asked about it by anyone outside the company. Emma stared at him. Why would anyone? Be careful, he said again, and in those two words was the whole texture of things she didn't know yet. Layers she couldn't see, a structure she had only glimpsed the edge of. She was still staring at him when a black car pulled up, silent and immediate, and Alexander Romano got in. The car pulled away. Emma stood on the sidewalk in the cold, and the city moved around her, and she turned Maggie's face over in her mind, and Ryan's frown when he'd heard the name Romano and the word careful and the quality of that kiss. And she thought, something is wrong with everything I thought tonight was. She went back inside to find Maggie, and as she crossed through the lobby, her phone buzzed in her clutch. An unknown number. She stopped walking and opened the message. It said, the account. Don't let it go. A.R. Emma read it twice. Then she looked up from her phone. Across the lobby near the entrance stood a man in a dark coat. Not the same man who had watched Alexander's table earlier, but the same type. Watching. Assessing. Not her. Not exactly. But the space around her. She put her phone back in her bag with steady hands. And she thought 2 years ago the worst thing that could happen to me did happen. And it had not killed her. And whatever this was, this accident, this wrong turn, this woman who grabbed a stranger's arm and whispered 3 impossible words, she was still standing. So was he, and the account, and the warning, and all the things she didn't know yet. She found Maggie near the coat check. Ready? Maggie asked. Yes, Emma said. But she wasn't. Not for any of what was coming. She just didn't know that yet. She didn't sleep that night. Emma lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling of her apartment, and turned the evening over and over in her mind, like a stone she kept finding new edges on. The kiss, the conversation. Alexander's voice when he said, be careful, not alarmed, not dramatic, just precise and certain. The way a doctor is precise and certain when they tell you something is serious. The text message. The man in the dark coat watching the space around her. And underneath all of it, like a current, she could feel, but not see the account. Don't let it go. At 2 a.m., she got up and made tea. She didn't drink and sat at her kitchen table with her phone and looked at the text again. Unknown number. No way to respond. No way to ask what it meant. She told herself this was not her problem. She told herself she had walked into a room tonight, borrowed a moment of dignity from a stranger, and walked back out. That was the whole story. That was the complete and finished transaction. She told herself that until almost 4 a.m. And then she went and checked on Lily, asleep on her stomach, with both arms flung out the way she'd slept since infancy, like someone who had never once in her life doubted the safety of the ground beneath her. And Emma stood in the doorway and watched her daughter breathe, and thought about the account. Ryan had been emptying it for 8 months before he left. She had documented everything afterward at the instruction of her divorce lawyer, every transfer, every withdrawal, every movement of money that she could trace. She had thought she understood what she was looking at. A husband hiding money. A man preparing to leave and making sure he left with as much as possible. What if that wasn't what she'd been looking at? She went back to bed. She did not sleep. By Monday morning, she had almost convinced herself to let it go. She dropped Lily at school, commuted to her office on the 14th floor of a building 3 stops down on the Blue Line, made coffee, responded to 16 emails, attended a 9 a.m. status meeting for a client campaign that needed revisions, and told herself the entire way through all of it that she was a woman with a real life and a real job and a real child, and absolutely no business pulling on threads that led toward whatever world Alexander Romano occupied. It held until 11:15 when her coworker Jess leaned over the partition between their desks and said, "Hey, did you see that thing about Meridian?" Emma looked up from her monitor. "What thing?" "That restaurant downtown, the fancy one in the Gold Coast. It was in the news this morning. Something about a financial investigation. Some charity foundation connected to it." Jess scrolled on her phone. "Says here the foundation director is cooperating with federal authorities, and there may be, quote, significant criminal involvement at multiple levels of the organization. Which yikes?" Emma was very still. "Which foundation?" she asked. Jess squinted at her phone. "Covenant Children's Fund. The charity event. Last Friday. The gold embossed invitation on Emma's kitchen counter." "Huh," Emma said. "I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it?" Jess set her phone down. "Those fancy charity events always feel a little too polished, right? Like who has that kind of money to throw around just for kids' hospital wings?" "People with something to launder," Emma said, before she'd thought about whether to say it. Jess blinked at her. "That was oddly specific. I watch a lot of true crime." She turned back to her monitor and stared at her screen without seeing it, and felt the ground shift very slightly under her feet. She looked up Ryan Carter's employment history that afternoon, sitting in the bathroom on her lunch break with her phone, because she didn't want anyone to see what she was doing, and she couldn't have explained why. She knew the basics. He'd worked in financial services mid-level account management, the kind of job that sounds significant when described at dinner parties, but is actually about managing client portfolios and moving money between places it already mostly wants to go. He'd moved between 3 firms in 6 years, which she'd always attributed to his restlessness. He talked about ambition, the way some men talked about it as something they possessed rather than something they did anything with. She found the 3rd firm, Navarro Capital Group. She had never paid attention to the name before. It had been to her simply the job he had when he left her the job he'd apparently had for 14 months before their divorce. She looked up Navarro Capital Group. The company's web presence was minimal in the way that either meant very small or very deliberate. A logo, a landing page, a list of services described in the kind of language that said everything and nothing comprehensive. Financial management, diversified investment solutions, bespoke wealth strategies. She scrolled. Near the bottom of the page, under a section titled Leadership, there was a photo and a name she recognized. Not Ryan. Not anyone she'd met. But the last name, Marcus Navarro. She sat with that for a moment. Then she Googled Navarro Romano Chicago, and her phone nearly vibrated out of her hand with results. She didn't read all of them. She read enough. She sat in the bathroom stall for 4 more minutes after she stopped reading, just breathing, and then she washed her hands and went back to her desk and spent the rest of the afternoon being extremely competent at her job, while something cold and slow moved through her chest. Ryan hadn't just cheated on her. Ryan had been working for a company connected to the Romano family's rivals for over a year of their marriage. And the money he'd taken from their accounts, the money she had categorized as a greedy husband making sure he was comfortable, had not all gone to Ryan. She was almost certain of that now. She just didn't know where it had gone, or what it had paid for, or what it meant that she'd spent the weekend at an event attended by Alexander Romano, had kissed Alexander Romano, had spent an hour talking to Alexander Romano, and Ryan had seen all of it. Ryan had seen all of it, and he knew who Alexander Romano was in a way Emma had not known. And when he'd come to the table, he'd had that particular calculation in his eyes that she'd missed in the moment, but could see clearly now in retrospect, the way you see a thing more clearly once you know what you're looking for. He hadn't been surprised to see her. He'd been assessing. She called Maggie from the parking garage after work, sitting in her car with the engine off. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen and not do the thing where you get worried." "I'm already worried," Maggie said. "That opener guarantees worried. Navarro Capital Group. Does Marcus Brennan know that name?" A pause. "Emma. Does he?" "Yes." Maggie's voice had dropped. "Yes, he knows the name. He's—" She stopped. "Where are you?" "My car. Parking garage." "Are you alone?" "Maggie." "Are you—" "I'm alone. I'm in my car. I just found something and I need someone to confirm whether I'm being paranoid or whether I'm actually—" "What did you find?" Emma told her. She told her about Navarro Capital Group, about Ryan's employment, about the timeline, about 14 months of her husband going to work every day for a company with ties to people who appeared to be in direct conflict with the man she'd kissed on Friday night. When she finished, Maggie was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus told me," Maggie said slowly. "When he mentioned Romano, he said that Navarro was the reason the deal fell through. That Navarro was, he said they were the kind of organization that used legitimate businesses as a front. That the money that moved through them wasn't always money from the clients listed on the paperwork." "So Ryan was laundering money," Emma said flatly. "Not just stealing from me. Using our accounts to move money for Navarro, which means the money I documented for the divorce attorney. Might have a very different paper trail than either of you realized," Maggie finished. Emma pressed her forehead against the steering wheel. "What do I do with this?" she said to the floor of the car. "I don't know," Maggie said. "But Emma, the text from Alexander. Don't let it go. What if he already knew?" Emma had been thinking about that since the bathroom at lunch. "He knew Ryan," she said. "He recognized the name at the table. I saw it. I just didn't know what I was seeing." She lifted her head. "He knew who Ryan was before I told him anything. He was already watching." "Which means," Maggie said carefully, "that Friday night wasn't an accident for him." Emma sat with that. Let it move through her. "No," she said. "I think it was. I think I was the accident. I think everything else was context he already had." "Does that change how you feel about it?" She thought about that long, careful question. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "I need to think." "Emma." Maggie's voice was low and very serious. "Be careful. Whatever this is, be careful." The second person in 3 days to say that exact word to her. "I know," Emma said. She started the car. She didn't contact him. She told herself she wasn't going to. She picked Lily up from after-school care and made pasta with the sauce. Lily liked the one with the basil that Emma grew in a pot on the windowsill, and she sat at the dinner table and listened to her daughter explain with great scientific authority and some significant factual errors how volcanoes formed, and she nodded and asked questions and kept her face exactly right. After Lily was asleep, she poured a glass of wine she barely touched and spread everything she had on the kitchen table. Her divorce paperwork, the copies she'd made of the financial statements, the lawyer's summary of what had been documented and what had been settled. She went through it for 2 hours. And then she found it. It was in the third transfer, a movement of money from their joint account to an account in Ryan's name that she'd always assumed was personal savings he was hiding. She'd always assumed that because that was the frame her attorney had given her. He was hiding money to prepare for the divorce. It's common. She'd accepted that frame because she'd had no reason to question it. But she had the account number. And she had spent the last 3 hours learning just enough about what Navarro Capital Group actually was to understand that some of those transfers, the ones in the middle, the consistent monthly ones, had the signature of operational payments, not personal savings. Not money being set aside for a comfortable exit. Money going somewhere to accomplish something. She took a photo of the relevant pages and sat back and looked at the ceiling. The question was not whether this mattered. It clearly mattered. The question was who she gave it to, not Ryan. Ryan was the source of the problem, not her attorney. Her attorney had closed the case, and reopening it meant attention and time and money Emma didn't have. Not the police. Not yet. Not without understanding what she was actually holding. She looked at her phone. She looked at the unknown number. She typed, "The account." "I think I know what some of the transfers were paying for. I need someone to confirm I'm reading this right." She stared at what she'd typed. She pressed send before she could decide not to. She waited 6 minutes. Then her phone rang. "Unknown number." She answered. "You went through the documents," Alexander said. "You knew about the Navarro connection," Emma said. "Not an accusation, a statement." She needed to establish from the first word that she was not calling as someone who had been manipulated. She was calling as someone who had found a thing and needed to understand it. "You knew who Ryan was before I said his name." A brief silence. "Yes." "Before Friday, you already knew." "I knew the name. I didn't know who he was to you." "But you knew what he was connected to." "Yes." Emma took a breath. "What did he take from you?" The question landed and held. "What makes you think he took something from me specifically?" Alexander said. "Because of the way you looked at him when he came to the table," Emma said. "And because the way you said be careful about the account wasn't the way someone says it when they're giving general advice. It was the way someone says it when they have a specific concern about a specific thing." She paused. "What did he take?" Another silence. Longer this time. She listened to it and refused to fill it. "Information," Alexander said finally. He had access through his position at Navarro to communication that should have stayed internal. He forwarded it. 1.5 years ago. To whom? To people who used it to find something I had been trying to protect. Emma closed her eyes. The Romano family. His family. Something I had been trying to protect. "Who did they find?" she asked quietly. His voice, when it came, was controlled in the specific way of a person who has practiced being controlled around something that hurts. "My sister, and her son." Emma's hand tightened on the phone. "Are they—" "I don't know," he said. "Not entirely, not yet." 3 words that cost him something to say. She could hear the cost of them. She sat with that for a moment. A missing sister, a missing child. A man who had spent some significant measure of the last 1.5 years carrying that in the particular silence of someone who could not afford to let it be seen. She thought about what that did to a person, what shape it made. "The transfers in our account," she said, pulling herself back to what she could actually contribute. "The monthly ones, consistent amounts, 3rd week of each month. Were they operational payments? For Navarro?" "Very possibly," he said. "I have the account number they went to." Silence. "Emma," he said, and there was something new in his voice that she couldn't immediately categorize. "I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. I don't want anything from this. I want to understand what happened in my own life. I spent 2 years thinking my husband stole from me because he was selfish and greedy and I was convenient. If that's not the whole story, I want to know the whole story." A pause. "And if what I have can help you find your sister, then tell me what you need." The silence that followed was the longest yet. "You understand," Alexander said slowly, "that if you share what you have with me, you become part of this. There's no clean separation after that." "I became part of this," Emma said. "When Ryan used my accounts to run payments for people who hurt your family. I didn't choose that, but it happened in my life, in my name, with my money." Her voice was steady. "I'd rather be part of it consciously than find out later that I was part of it all along and never knew." She heard him exhale, quiet, almost inaudible. The sound of a man adjusting something internal. "Send me the pages," he said. 2 days later, he called again. She was on the blue line coming back from a client meeting when her phone lit up, same unknown number, and she pressed the phone to her ear and blocked the sound of the train with her hand. "The account number matches," Alexander said. No preamble. The transfers were operational. 14 payments over 16 months. 14 payments. Emma did the math in her head without meaning to. The marriage she'd been living inside while those payments were being made. The conversations she'd had about their budget, about saving for Lily's school, about whether they could afford a slightly bigger apartment. All of it happening at the same time as Ryan processing payments through their accounts for an organization that had helped people hurt the Romano family. How much did Ryan know? She asked. About what he was actually doing. Everything, Alexander said. He wasn't a peripheral figure. He recruited himself to Navarro, made contact and offered access to information about my operations in exchange for significant compensation. Emma sat with that. He wasn't manipulated into it. No. He chose it. Yes. She thought about Ryan's laugh at the charity event, his girlfriend in the red dress, the ease of him. When did you find out? She asked. 5 months ago, Alexander said. We traced the leak backward. Ryan's name came up through several converging lines of evidence. By then, he had left Navarro's direct employment. He was insulating himself. By then, he'd already left me, Emma said. Yes. She processed that. The timeline. Ryan had delivered the information. Then he'd left Navarro. Then, almost simultaneously, he'd left Emma. The sequence of it laid out this clearly, told a story she hadn't been able to see from inside it. He left before anyone could connect him, she said. Clean exit from Navarro. Clean exit from the marriage. Nothing in his name, nothing to trace. Except the account numbers, Alexander said. Which he miscalculated. Because he didn't think I'd look, Emma said. Because he never expected me to look closely enough. He left me the documentation because he thought it would just be divorce paperwork. She laughed, and it was not a happy sound. He thought I was too busy surviving to go back and examine the evidence. He was wrong, Alexander said. He was wrong about a lot of things, Emma said. She met him in person 4 days after that. He had suggested a restaurant in Wicker Park, not flashy, notably unprivate in that way that actually creates privacy, because nothing about it suggests significance. She found the table in the back, and he was already there, which she noted as the kind of habit a person developed when they needed to always see who came through the door. She sat down, and he looked at her the same way he had at the charity event, taking her in without performing the act of taking her in. You look like you've been sleeping, he said. Compliment or observation? Observation. The last time I saw you, you looked like someone who hadn't slept in 2 years. Maybe I hadn't, she said. She looked at him across the table and said what she had been turning over since the phone call. Tell me what happened with your sister. Not the investigation version, the real version. He was quiet for a moment. Her name is Sophia, he said. She married someone outside this life. I wanted that for her. She has had a son named Marco. He was 4 when they disappeared. He turned his water glass a half rotation. 14 months ago. Someone gave the people looking for leverage against me the address of the house she was living in under a different name. She was relocated. Marco was... He stopped. They were separated in the confusion. Sophia got out. Marco didn't. Emma felt it hit her somewhere below the sternum. He's a child, she said. He was 4, Alexander said. He's 5 now, somewhere. The particular weight of that. A 5-year-old child somewhere. A mother separated from her son for over a year. Sophia is alive, Emma said. She's being kept, he said carefully. The people who have Marco, they're using him to keep her compliant. She won't run without him, they know that. Where is she? Somewhere I can't yet reach her safely, he said. The information Ryan provided allowed them to find her. What Ryan's account activity proves is that the payment for that information was made and received, which connects the specific people involved to the specific action. That matters because some of the people currently protecting the people who have Sophia believe they're shielded by distance. The payment trail removes that shield. Emma sat very still. My divorce records, she said slowly. My account documentation, it's not just evidence of what Ryan did to me. No, he said. It's dated evidence of a financial transaction that directly preceded the disappearance of 2 people. In the right hands, it becomes part of a chain. The right hands. She looked at him. What are the right hands? "There's a federal investigation," he said. "It's been running for 8 months. The lead agent is a woman named Torres. She's clean, she's careful, she's working upward through Navarro's structure. She doesn't have the payment chain yet." Emma understood. "You can't give it to her directly. Anything I hand to federal authorities is scrutinized for motive and origin. It becomes complicated. It creates delays." He met her eyes. "But you're a private citizen documenting financial harm from your divorce. You have a straightforward reason to bring documentation of those account transfers to federal authorities. You have legal standing. You have no criminal connection." He wasn't asking her. He was showing her a shape, letting her decide if she wanted to step into it. "This is why you said don't let it go," Emma said. "I said it before I knew what you had," he said. "I said it because I knew Ryan had been connected to accounts that needed to stay quiet, and I didn't want you to become a target by accident. By the time you called, what you sent changed the calculation entirely." "You need me," Emma said, not accusatorially, simply naming the thing. "Yes," he said without hesitation or apology. She respected that. She had come to understand over the last several days that what she respected most about this man was that he did not dress things up. He told her what was true and let her determine what to do with it. "If I go to Agent Torres," Emma said slowly, "what does that look like for me? You report financial discrepancies discovered during divorce proceedings. You provide documentation. You are a witness to civil fraud with potential criminal implications. You are cooperative and transparent." He paused. "You are not in danger from Navarro as long as you are identified as a civilian witness rather than an adversarial party. They don't move against people who are simply cooperating with an existing investigation." "And if Ryan figures out what I've done?" Something moved in Alexander's face. "Ryan will not be a problem," he said. The way he said it was quiet and completely certain, and Emma chose not to ask what it meant with any precision. "There's one more thing," Alexander said. He reached into his jacket pocket and set a photograph on the table between them. It was a child, dark hair, serious expression, exactly the age a child who had been 14 months ago would look. Wearing a shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on the front. "That's Marco," he said. Emma looked at the photograph for a long moment. She thought about Lily asleep in the dark with her arms flung wide. She thought about a 4-year-old child somewhere without his mother, and a mother somewhere without her child, and a man across from her, who carried that every day in the specific silence of someone who could not afford to let it be seen. She picked up the photograph and looked at it more carefully. Marco had Alexander's eyes, the same quality of dark, watchful depth that had on the man been the first thing she'd noticed across a room. She set the photograph back down. "Tell me about Agent Torres," she said. She called Torres's office the next morning. She had rehearsed it sitting in her car in the school parking lot after dropping Lily off, running through the exact shape of what she would say and what she wouldn't. She would say she was a recently divorced woman who had been reviewing her financial records and had found inconsistencies she wanted to report. She would say the account numbers had led her to do some research, and she was concerned about the nature of some of the transactions. She would say she understood there might be an ongoing investigation. She would not say Alexander Romano's name. She would not say she had kissed the man at a charity event and then spent 10 days unwrapping the implications, like someone slowly removing bandaging from something she wasn't sure she was ready to see. The agent picked up on the second ring. "Torres. Agent Torres." Emma's voice was steady. "My name is Emma Carter. I have some financial documentation from my divorce proceedings that I think may be relevant to an investigation involving Navarro Capital Group." A brief pause, professional assessing. "Ms. Carter, when did you come across this information?" "I've had it for 2 years," Emma said. "I only understood what I was looking at recently." Another pause, different quality. The pause of someone who has just recalibrated their attention upward. "Could you come in this week?" Torres asked. "Yes," Emma said. She sat in the parking lot for another 4 minutes after she hung up, watching the other parents drive away, watching the school building settle into its ordinary morning. and she thought 2 weeks ago, I was a woman who dropped her daughter at school and went to work and counted her dollars and convinced everyone she was fine. Now she was a woman sitting on evidence that could place a child's disappearance at the feet of the people responsible. The worst had already happened to her, and she was still standing. And that meant she could do this. She texted the unknown number that evening. Meeting is set for Thursday. 3 minutes later. Thank you. 2 words. That was all. But she read them 3 times, and then set her phone face down on the table and sat with the particular texture of being thanked by someone who didn't offer it cheaply. Then her phone buzzed again. Same number, different message. Be careful tomorrow. Emma frowned. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Why tomorrow specifically? She waited. The response came after 1.5 minutes, which was longer than his previous response times, which meant he had considered what to say before sending it. Ryan knows you have the documents. Someone told him. Emma sat up straight. She looked around her apartment, the kitchen table, the pasta pot still drying on the rack, Lily's drawing of a volcano with exuberant red crayon lava taped to the refrigerator, the ordinary complete smallness of her life, and felt the specific quality of the floor shifting. How do you know she typed? The response came quickly this time. Because he called me. Emma stared at the screen. He called you, tonight. He knows about the charity event. He knows about the text. He doesn't know about Torres yet. But he knows you're looking at the account. She put the phone down and pressed her fingers against her mouth and thought very carefully for 30 seconds. Then she picked it up again. What did he want? The response took 2 minutes. When it came, it was 3 words. To make a deal. To make. Emma read those 3 words and felt something cold move through her that was not quite fear and not quite anger, but something in between, the feeling of understanding the full shape of a thing for the first time. Ryan hadn't run. Ryan hadn't gone quietly. Ryan had found out she was holding evidence, and his response had been to call the man he'd betrayed and offer a transaction. He was still calculating, still managing exits, still the man who had spent 8 months preparing to leave while she slept beside him. What kind of deal, she typed. She waited. Alexander's response came in 2 parts, 30 seconds apart. First, he offered information about where Marco is. Then, in exchange for immunity from what you're bringing to Torres. Emma didn't move for a long time. She sat at her kitchen table, with the ordinary sounds of her apartment around her, the refrigerator hum, a car passing outside Lily, breathing in the room down the hall, and she looked at those 2 messages and understood that the ground had shifted so far from where she'd been standing 2 weeks ago that she could not have imagined this from there. Ryan knew where Marco was. A 5-year-old child with Alexander's eyes and a cartoon dinosaur on his shirt. Ryan knew, and he was using that knowledge as currency. Emma pressed her hands flat on the table. She thought about what kind of man did that. She thought about 14 months of payments through their joint account and a 4-year-old child disappearing, and Ryan at the charity event with his girlfriend and his easy laugh, calculating and assessing even then. She thought about what Alexander would do with this offer. She thought about what she would do. She picked up her phone. Don't answer him yet, she typed. Let me think. She sent it before she could question herself. Then she sat in the quiet of her own kitchen, in her own life, in the middle of something she had walked into, by asking a stranger for 3 words, and she thought with complete cold clarity about what Ryan valued, what Ryan feared, and what exactly Emma Carter had that Ryan had never once accounted for. He had never thought she was paying attention. He had underestimated her for 6 years of marriage and 2 years of divorce. He had miscalculated. And now she was going to use that. Emma didn't sleep again that night, but this time it was different. The first sleepless night after the charity event had been reactive, her mind spinning on adrenaline and confusion, and the disorienting sensation of having stumbled into something she didn't understand. This sleepless night was deliberate. She sat at her kitchen table with her divorce files spread in front of her, and she thought methodically and without emotion about Ryan Carter. Not the man she had married. Not the man who had left. The man who had called Alexander Romano tonight and offered to trade a child's location for his own immunity. That man. She needed to think about that man clearly. Ryan was strategic in the way of people who had never had to be resilient, who had arranged their lives so that strategy substituted for actual endurance. He planned exits before he committed to entrances. He calculated what he could afford to lose before he decided what he wanted. He had done it to their marriage. He had done it at Navarro. And now he was doing it again, sensing that the ground was shifting, identifying what he had that others wanted, and attempting to broker his way to safety before the collapse arrived. The mistake he kept making, the one he had made for their entire marriage, was that he calculated for his own priorities and assumed everyone else shared them. Ryan valued safety. Ryan valued comfort. Ryan valued being ahead of the consequence. He assumed Emma valued those things too. He had never understood that what Emma valued most underneath everything was the truth. Not justice necessarily, not revenge, the truth. She had spent 2 years not knowing the full shape of what had happened in her own life, and that not knowing had done something to her that the leaving itself hadn't. It had made her feel like a fool, like someone who had been played without even being considered important enough to lie to properly. Ryan assumed she would respond to his offer the same way he would respond to such an offer, by calculating what she could get, by negotiating, by finding the arrangement that protected her most. He had no idea that what Emma wanted was for every single truth to come out. All of it. Including the parts that implicated her. Including the parts that made her look naive. She would take every bit of it over the sensation of still not knowing. She picked up her phone at midnight. "Are you awake?" she typed to the unknown number. The response came in under 30 seconds. "Yes." She called him. He picked up on the first ring, which told her he'd been waiting. "Ryan thinks this is a negotiation," Emma said without preamble. "He doesn't know that he already lost. He just hasn't been told yet." A brief pause. "What are you thinking?" "He contacted you directly because he's scared," she said. "He found out about the account documents. He knows I'm meeting Torres Thursday. He can do the math. The payment chain closes a loop that puts him at the center of a federal investigation. So he called you with the only card he has left." She paused. "Marco's location." "Yes," Alexander said, "which means he actually has it, or believes he has it." "Our read is the same," he said. He maintained contact with Navarro's operational side even after he formally separated. He would have access to certain information that wasn't officially his to keep. "If you answer him," Emma said, "if you engage with his offer, he'll know he still has leverage. He'll slow play it. He'll string you along on Marco's location while his attorneys work on the immunity question. He has enough to buy himself weeks, maybe months of ambiguity." She stopped. "Don't answer him. You want me to ignore the offer. I want you to let him believe he's still in control for exactly long enough." She pulled one of the financial statements toward her and looked at the account number she'd memorized by now. "Tell me about the people holding Sofia and Marco, the ones Navarro is protecting. What do they want with them?" "Sofia is a pressure point," Alexander said. "She's kept to ensure I don't move against certain people directly. Marco is the mechanism. Without him, Sofia runs. With him, she stays." A pause. "They understand my family well enough to know that I will not risk either of them through direct action as long as the threat is structured the way it currently is." "And Ryan gave them that structure," Emma said, "by delivering Sofia's location. Without him, they wouldn't have found her. Without that, finding Marco would be home." "Correct." Emma nodded to herself in the dark of her kitchen. "So Ryan isn't just a peripheral witness. He's a causative actor in Marco's disappearance." "In any honest legal accounting of it, yes." "Then his offer isn't a trade," Emma said. "It's a confession dressed as a bargain. If he knows where Marco is, it's because he's still in contact with the people holding him, which means he's not just a past participant, he's an ongoing one." She let that land. "He's not offering you information. He's offering you proof that he's still involved." Silence on the line. Then Alexander said quietly, "You got there faster than my lawyers did." "Your lawyers weren't married to him for 6 years," Emma said. Something almost like a sound of private amusement moved through the line. "What's your read on what he wants most?" "To not go to prison," Emma said immediately. "Everything else is secondary. The immunity isn't about walking free, it's about walking away clean. He wants to be the man who helped, not the man who caused. That's who he's always been. He needs the story of himself to stay intact." "And what dismantles that?" "The truth," Emma said. "All of it, publicly, with his name attached to the causative role, not the cooperative one." She paused. "If Torres has the full picture before Ryan can offer cooperation, there's no cooperation to offer. He becomes the subject of the investigation, not a witness. The immunity option closes." "If Torres has the full picture before Thursday," Alexander said slowly, "it changes the terms of everything." "Yes." Emma looked at the clock. 12:47 a.m. "What do you need to give her the full picture?" Another silence longer, and she could feel him working through it. "There are things I can't give Torres directly," he said. "Not without creating complications." "Then give them to me," Emma said. "Tell me what she needs. I'll be the one who brings it." "Emma." His voice had a different quality now, careful in a new way. Not protective exactly. More like someone handling something they'd assessed as valuable and wanted not to damage. "You understand what it means to walk into that office Thursday with everything. Not just the account transfers, everything." "Tell me what everything looks like," she said. He told her. It took 40 minutes. She took notes in the margin of her financial statements with a pencil, not because she would need the notes, but because the physical act of writing helped her process. He told her about the Navarro structure, the shell companies, the 3-layer separation between the people who ordered Sophia's capture and the people who executed it. He told her about the specific communication Ryan had forwarded, an internal security memo about Sophia's relocated address, and how that memo connected to 4 named individuals who were currently operating under the protection of Navarro's legal infrastructure. He told her about the payment account, the one the 14 transfers from Emma's joint account had fed into. The downstream account that the payment had been wired to after Ryan's operational cut. He had the account number and the institution and the wire references. He told her all of it with the precision of someone who had been building this case for 14 months and had never had a clean way to surface it. Emma wrote in the margins and listened and did not say, "This is too much," or "I'm not equipped for this," or any of the things she would have said 2 years ago or even 2 weeks ago. She had been equipped all along. She just hadn't known what she was being equipped for. When he finished, the line was quiet. "One more thing," Emma said. "Sophia, where is she?" "I have a location. I've had it for 6 weeks." His voice was flat with the flatness of someone controlling something large. "I can't move on it safely while Marco is separate from her. If I move, they move Marco. The threat has always been the separation. But if Torres has enough," Emma said, "if the federal case is strong enough that Navarro's protection structure starts to dissolve, the leverage dissolves with it," he said. "Yes. The people holding them depend on Navarro's operational shell to stay hidden. When that shell becomes a federal target, they lose the cover. And then, the calculation changes." Emma sat very still. "Thursday," she said. "Yes," he said. "I'll bring everything you've given me. I'll frame it as information I discovered in the course of reviewing my own financial records. I have legal standing, and I have documentation. The wire references you just gave me, I can cross-reference them against my own account records and present them as my own discovery." She paused. "Which in a meaningful sense they are. This did happen in my life, in my accounts." "In your name," he said, "without your knowledge or consent." "Yes. You don't have to do this the way you're describing," he said. "There are attorneys who could—" "No," Emma said. "No attorneys. No intermediaries. Me. I walk in there and I give her everything, and I tell her exactly what happened in my marriage, and what I found, and what I pieced together. No one can challenge the authenticity of that." He was quiet for a moment. "You're certain?" "I've been certain since I found the account number," she said. "I've just been deciding whether to trust you with that." Another silence, shorter this time. "Have you decided?" he asked. "I'm on the phone with you at 1 in the morning giving you my plan," Emma said. "What do you think?" Wednesday came in fast and ordinary. Emma dropped Lily at school, commuted to work, answered emails, attended a campaign review that she participated in with the seamless competence of someone whose mind was elsewhere. She was running the Thursday conversation with Torres on a parallel track, shaping the language, the sequence, the logic of presentation. She was good at this. She had always been good at organizing complex information into clear narrative. It was what she did for clients. It was what she had always done for everyone except herself. Jess stopped by her desk at 11. "You seem weirdly calm today," Jess said. "You've seemed weirdly calm all week. Is that good, or is that the kind of calm that means something bad is happening?" "Everything's fine," Emma said. "You said that too smoothly," Jess said suspiciously and went back to her desk. At 2 p.m., her phone buzzed. Not the unknown number, her personal number. Ryan. She looked at the screen for 5 full seconds before she answered. Emma. His voice was the voice she remembered from the early years, warm and reasonable. The voice he used when he wanted something and was willing to perform ease to get it. "I've been thinking we should talk." "About what, Ryan?" "About the financial stuff. From the divorce." A pause designed to sound casual. "I heard you've been going through the records again. I know that stuff can be confusing when you look at it out of context. I'd rather we sat down and went through it together than had any misunderstandings." Emma watched a notification appear and disappear on her computer screen and felt a specific clean clarity. He's scared. Not of her, not exactly. He'd never been scared of Emma specifically. He was scared of the thing she was holding and the direction she was pointed in. He still believed he could manage this through personal contact. That's what he always believed, that the person in front of him was primarily a person and people could be managed. "I'm not confused," Emma said pleasantly. A brief pause. "I'm not suggesting you are. I just think—" "Ryan," her voice did not change. "I'm at work. I can't really talk right now. This is important." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm not discussing it at my desk. Can we meet tonight?" The urgency was more audible now, the seam in the performance. "Emma, there are things you don't know. About that account, about what was actually happening. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm trying to—" "I'll call you later," Emma said. She hung up. She put her phone face down on her desk. Her heart was beating faster than she wanted it to, not from fear, but from the sheer adrenaline of standing at the edge of something that was about to become irreversible. She had spent 2 years feeling like the passive subject of her own story, the woman things happened to who then survived them. This was different. This was her making something happen. She turned back to her screen and kept working. He called again at 4:30. She didn't answer. He called at 6:15 while she was making Lily's dinner. She didn't answer. At 7:02, after Lily was fed and drawing volcanoes at the kitchen table with extreme concentration, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "I know you're going to Torres tomorrow. Don't. Please just talk to me first." Emma read it. She set the phone down next to the pasta pot. "Mom, does lava actually glow?" Lily asked without looking up from her drawing. "Yes, baby. It's molten rock. It's so hot it produces its own light." "That's the best thing I've ever heard," Lily said with complete sincerity. Emma looked at her daughter for a moment, 7 years old, completely consumed by the magnificent fact of glowing rocks, and felt something settle in her chest, like a stone finding the bottom of still water. She texted the unknown number Ryan knows about tomorrow. He's been calling. "He texted me directly. Alexander's response came within a minute, I know. He also called me again. He's escalating. What did you tell him? That I was considering his offer?" Emma exhaled. "Good. Keep him looking toward Alexander and away from what she was doing. Does he know what I'm bringing tomorrow?" He knows about the account transfers. He doesn't know about the wire references. He thinks you have the surface documentation." "Good," Emma typed. "Keep him thinking that." Then after a pause, "How's Sophia?" The response took longer, almost 3 minutes. "Then she's been moved. Yesterday. Different location." Emma stared at the screen. "Does that change anything?" "Not for tomorrow, but it means they're reacting. Someone told them the ground was shifting." Emma felt the cold move through her again. Someone had told them. Not Alexander. He had no reason to alert them. Not Torres, the meeting hadn't happened yet. Not Maggie, who knew very little of the specific operational details. Which left Ryan. Ryan, who had called Alexander tonight to maintain the appearance of negotiation, while simultaneously warning Navarro that a witness was about to talk. Trying to demonstrate continued usefulness to people who might otherwise consider him a liability. She typed, "Ryan tipped them off. He's trying to stay valuable to Navarro." A pause then. "Yes, that's our read too. Does Sophia's new location, do you have it?" A longer pause this time. She waited. "Not yet. Working on it." Emma set the phone down and stood up from the table and walked to the window and looked at the street below and thought about a woman who had been moved last night because someone had decided the situation was becoming dangerous. A woman who had been separated from her child for over a year, who was somewhere Emma couldn't picture, couldn't place in physical space, couldn't make real in the specific way that would make it feel urgent enough to match what she knew it was. She went back to the table and sat next to Lily and watched her daughter add a tiny figure to the drawing, a person standing at the base of the volcano looking up. "Who's that?" Emma asked. "That's a scientist," Lily said. "She's studying the volcano. She's not scared because she knows what it's going to do before it does it." Emma looked at the small pencil figure at the base of the enormous crayon volcano. "That's a good thing to be," she said quietly. She was at the federal building by 8:45 Thursday morning. Torres was exactly what Emma had imagined, from the voice on the phone, mid-40s, precise with the specific quality of attention of someone who had spent years listening to people tell her partial truths and had become very good at identifying the seams. She shook Emma's hand and led her to a plain office and set a yellow legal pad in front of herself and a bottle of water in front of Emma and said, "Tell me everything from the beginning. Don't edit." So Emma did. She started with the marriage. She went through the timeline, the accounts, the first transfer. She'd noticed the pattern that her lawyer had characterized as standard divorce asset hiding. She explained what she'd found when she went back through the records with fresh eyes. She presented the account numbers, the wire references, the timeline of transfers against the timeline of Ryan's employment at Navarro. Torres did not interrupt. She wrote steadily and listened in the way that very good interrogators listen, not collecting what you say, but collecting everything around what you say. The choices about sequencing and emphasis and what you reach for first. When Emma got to the wire references and the downstream account, Torres stopped writing. "How did you obtain this specific account information?" she asked. Her voice was neutral. Emma had prepared for this. "The account number appeared in a financial document Ryan left behind," Emma said. "A printed statement that was in a box of records he didn't take when he left the apartment. I found it when I was cleaning out storage last month." She paused. "I can produce the document." She could produce it. Alexander had made sure of that, had provided her with a printed version of the reference document originating from a source that could withstand scrutiny in a format that established its provenance as something Ryan would have kept and reasonably could have left behind. She wasn't lying to Torres. The document was real. The account was real. The information was true. The story of how she found it had been carefully shaped. Torres looked at her for a moment with the expression of someone filing a note they'd return to later. "Continue," she said. Emma continued. She walked Torres through everything. The structure she understood of Navarro. The shell company layers. The communication chain that Ryan had compromised. She did not mention Alexander Romano by name. She did not explain how she understood the structure. She presented it as the pieced-together understanding of a woman who had gone down a research rabbit hole after finding a disturbing financial document in a storage box. Torres asked questions. They were sharp questions, the kind that tested the coherence of a narrative from multiple angles, and Emma answered all of them without hesitation. Because everything she said was true, and she had organized it the way she organized client campaigns, sequentially, evidentially, with each point connecting cleanly to the next. At the end of 90 minutes, Torres set down her pen. "Ms. Carter," she said, "I want to be direct with you. The information you've brought me today is significant. I can confirm that there is an active investigation into the entities you've described." She paused, choosing words carefully. "The specific documentation you've provided, particularly the downstream wire references, fills a gap in our existing evidence chain." Emma nodded. "I want to ask you something directly," Torres said. "Is there anything about how you came by this information that I should know? Anyone who helped you understand what you were looking at?" Emma met her eyes. "I'm a woman who spent 2 years not knowing what happened in her own marriage," Emma said. "When I found that document, I was angry. I did a lot of research. I spent a lot of late nights understanding the context of what I'd found. Some of the framework I described today I built by reading publicly available information about Navarro's corporate structure and cross-referencing it with what I had." She paused. "I found the truth in my own records. Everything I've told you today came from there." Torres looked at her for a long moment. "There's a child," Emma said before Torres could speak. "A 5-year-old boy, Marco. He's connected to this investigation." She watched Torres's expression carefully. "I don't know if you know about him." Something shifted in Torres's face. Subtle but unmistakable, the particular compression of someone confronting something that mattered to them personally. "We're aware of the situation," Torres said carefully. "How aware?" "Ms. Carter. Agent Torres." Emma leaned forward slightly. "I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. I'm trying to tell you that the people protecting Navarro's structure moved a person yesterday. The situation is not static. If there's a window—" "I understand," Torres said. Her voice had changed sharper with an urgency she was controlling. "I understand." She looked down at the documents. "I'm going to need you to come back in. We're going to need to formalize this." She looked up. "And I'm going to need you to be reachable." "I'm reachable," Emma said. "I'm not going anywhere." She was outside the building by 10:45. She stood on the sidewalk and let the cold air hit her face and thought, "That's done. That part is done." She texted the unknown number. "Done. She has everything. She knows about Marco." The response came in 40 seconds. How did she receive it? "Well, she'll be in touch with me again. She confirmed they have an active investigation and that what I brought fills a gap." A pause, then Emma added, "She's going to move faster now. I could feel it." 3 minutes passed. Then, "Thank you." 2 words again. The same 2 words as before. But this time they carried different weight, the weight of 14 months of a missing sister, a missing child, the specific exhaustion of a man who had been carrying something enormous with nowhere to put it down. Emma stood on the sidewalk outside a federal building and read those 2 words and felt the strangeness of where she was, who she had been 3 weeks ago, who she was standing here as now. Her phone rang. Her personal number. Ryan again. She answered. "I called Torres," he said immediately. His voice was different now. The performance of ease completely gone. She wouldn't confirm or deny anything. "Emma, what did you tell her?" "I told her the truth," Emma said. A silence. The specific silence of a calculation collapsing. "You don't understand what you've done." "I understand exactly what I've done," she said. "They will come after you," he said. And now there was something in his voice that was almost genuine. Not concern for her, she understood that, but the desperation of a man watching his last card disappear. "Navarro doesn't—" "Emma, you don't know these people." "I know what they did to a 4-year-old child," she said. "I know you helped them do it." Silence. "Ryan?" Her voice was steady. "I have nothing more to say to you. If you want to cooperate with Torres's investigation, that's your decision. But the window where that cooperation had value is significantly smaller than it was yesterday. She paused. You should call an attorney. She hung up. Her hands were perfectly steady. She walked to the blue line and got on the train and sat down and stared at the floor and stayed completely still inside herself for the 8-minute ride, because if she let herself move, she might start shaking. And she needed to not shake right now, not here, not in public. She got off at her stop and walked the 2 blocks to her office building and went to the bathroom on the 14th floor and stood at the sink and looked at herself in the mirror. She realized like someone who had just done something irreversible. She realized like herself. She washed her hands and went back to her desk. The call from Torres came Friday at noon. Ms. Carter, I want to update you on the status of your case. Torres's voice was precise, but had a different quality than Thursday, an energy under the surface carefully contained. Based on the documentation you provided, we were able to move on several related warrants this morning. I can't give you operational specifics, but I want you to know that your cooperation directly impacted the timeline of action. Emma's chest tightened. The child, she said. Marco. I can't speak to specifics of ongoing operations, Torres said. Then, after a brief pause that was not accidental, what I can tell you is that the material you provided gave us the evidentiary foundation to move on elements of this case that had been stalled. We moved. Emma put her hand flat on her desk. Is there anything I need to do? She asked. Stay available. Don't discuss the content of our meeting with anyone outside your attorney if you retain one. And Ms. Carter... Torres paused again. You were right that the situation was not static. The timing mattered. You were right about that. The call ended. Emma sat at her desk and stared at her monitor and did not cry because she was at work and she was a professional, but it was a near thing. Jess appeared over the partition. You look like someone just told you something enormous. I'm fine, Emma said. You keep saying that, Jess said. One day I'm going to believe you. Emma looked at her monitor. Torres had moved. The warrants were executed. Whatever that meant, operationally, it meant the structure that had been protecting the people who held Sofia and Marco was now under federal pressure. The calculation for everyone inside that structure had just changed in the space of a morning. She pulled out her phone. She texted the unknown number Torres called. They moved this morning. Warrants. She confirmed timing mattered. She watched the screen. The 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then I know. Sofia made contact 20 minutes ago. Emma stopped breathing for a second. Sofia contacted you. Yes. Is she? She's safe. She got out this morning. When the structure shifted, the people holding her, the ones whose cover was directly connected to the accounts your documentation exposed, they moved to protect themselves. They stopped watching her long enough. Emma read this 3 times. And Marco. The dots appeared again. Disappeared. She waited, and the waiting was the longest 30 seconds of the last 3 weeks. Then Sofia says she knows where he is. She was told last night they told her as leverage. She was supposed to believe she'd never get to him without their cooperation. She memorized the information, and she ran. Emma pressed her fingers over her mouth. She memorized it. Yes. She's been memorizing everything they told her for 14 months, waiting for a moment when she could run. A pause, then one more message. She's her brother's sister. Emma sat at her desk in the ordinary fluorescent light of her ordinary office and felt something move through her that she had no name for, something that was made of all the late nights and the shaking hands and the 2 years of rebuilding and the 3 weeks of choosing forward over backward, and it moved through her like weather and left something clean. Her phone buzzed one more time. They're going to get him tonight. I have a team. Torres has a parallel operation. We coordinated an hour ago. Emma looked at the message. Then she typed, Can I ask you something? Yes. When Ryan called you that first night when he offered the deal, did you already know what Sofia had told you? Did you already know she'd memorized it? A longer pause this time. Almost 2 minutes. Ooh. Then no. I didn't know that until this morning. I was considering what he offered. I won't lie to you, Emma. I was considering it. I would have given him a great deal to know where Marco was. Emma read that. But you didn't, she typed. Because you told me not to answer him yet. He wrote back, and I trusted that. She sat with that for a long moment. The weight of it. The specific, careful weight of a man who did not trust easily, who had learned at great cost what it meant to trust the wrong person, saying, I trusted that. You said, let me think, he wrote. And then you thought. And what you came up with was better than anything I had. Emma put her phone down on her desk and looked at the wall. She thought 3 weeks ago I was a woman who whispered 3 words to a stranger because she couldn't stand being broken in public. She thought, and now a child is coming home tonight. She thought I did not do this because of him. I did this because it was the right thing and because it happened in my life and I was the person who was there. She thought, but I would not have known what to do with what I found if he had not told me what I was looking at. She thought, and he would not have been able to move on the warrants without the chain I gave Torres. She thought we needed each other. She thought about the kiss 3 weeks ago and the quality of it, the deliberateness, the realness underneath the performance. And she thought about all the things that had turned out to be underneath the surface of that night. And she thought that she had stopped believing in things happening for a reason a long time ago. Somewhere in the 3rd month after Ryan left, when she'd needed to believe in something and found she couldn't. But she thought some things that start as accidents don't stay accidents. She picked up her phone. She typed, "Tell me when he's home." And she put her phone in her pocket and turned back to her work and waited in the ordinary afternoon for a child to come home. Emma was still awake. She had known she would be, had not even pretended to try sleeping, had sat on her couch with the lights low, and Lily long since asleep down the hall and her phone in her hand, like something she was keeping warm. She had been in that suspended state for hours, the kind of waiting that has a physical texture, where your body understands that something is happening somewhere that it cannot reach, and the only thing left to do is hold still and let the outcome arrive. The text said, "He's home." 2 words. The same economy he always used, but these 2 words were different from every other 2 words he had ever sent her. These 2 words had the weight of 14 months behind them. She could feel it through the screen. She pressed her hand flat against her chest and sat with that for a moment. Then she typed, "Is he okay?" The response took 4 minutes, which was longer than his usual response time. And during those 4 minutes, Emma sat very still and did not let herself imagine the reasons for the delay. Then, "He's scared. He doesn't know me." He cried for Sophia for the first hour and she couldn't stop holding him. A pause. Then, "He's okay. He will be okay." Emma read that 3 times. He cried for Sophia for the first hour. A 5-year-old boy who had spent over a year without his mother, held by strangers, moved from place to place, told nothing that was true, and the first thing he did when he was back with her was cry. Not from relief. From the release of all the fear he'd been carrying in a body too small for it. Emma understood that kind of crying. She had done it herself alone in her apartment on the 3rd night after Ryan left, when Lily was finally asleep and there was no one left to perform stability for. She typed, "Thank you for telling me." Then, after a moment, "How are you?" The longest pause yet. She watched the 3 dots appear and disappear twice before the message came. "I don't have a word for it," he wrote. "I've been running on the absence of him for 14 months. I don't know what to do with the presence." Emma sat with that sentence for a long time. She thought about what it meant to organize your entire existence around a wound, to build your days, and your decisions, and your carefully controlled silences around the shape of something missing, and then to have that thing returned. She thought about the strange disorientation of it, the way relief could feel initially like freefall, like the structure that had been holding you up was the loss itself, and without the loss, you weren't sure what was holding you anymore. She knew something about that. "You're allowed to not know," she typed. "For tonight. You don't have to know tonight." A pause. Then, "You're very certain about what people are allowed." "I've spent 2 years figuring out what I'm allowed," she wrote back. I've gotten good at it." She could almost feel him almost smile, which was a strange thing to feel through a text message at midnight. But she felt it anyway. "Get some sleep," she typed. "Both of you." She put her phone down and sat in the dark and listened to Lily breathing down the hall and thought, it's done. The part that needed doing is done. She did not think about what came next. She gave herself that night to not think about what came next. Ryan was arrested on Tuesday. Emma found out through Torres, who called her at 8 in the morning with the particular tone of someone delivering information they know will land hard, regardless of how the recipient feels about the subject. Ryan Carter was taken into federal custody this morning on charges related to the Navarro Capital Group investigation, Torres said. "Financial fraud conspiracy, and given the evidence chain, you helped us establish charges related to the facilitation of the kidnapping and unlawful detention of Sofia Romano and her minor child." Emma stood in her kitchen holding her coffee mug and felt nothing for a moment. Then she felt something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not the clean, righteous relief she thought she might feel. She felt something closer to grief. Not for Ryan, not for the man, not for the marriage. For the version of the story she had told herself for 6 years. The version where she had chosen someone who was fundamentally decent, even if ultimately wrong for her. That version was not available anymore. "Are there any implications for my cooperation?" Emma asked. "None. You're a civilian witness who came forward with legitimately obtained documentation of financial crimes committed against you. Your status in this case is protected." Torres paused. "I want to say something off the record." "Okay. What you brought us Thursday changed the timeline of this case by months," Torres said. "I want you to understand that. Not weeks, months. The evidentiary gap we'd been working around you closed it in 90 minutes. A pause. "I've been doing this work for 16 years. You came in there and told a coherent, evidenced, airtight story. That doesn't happen as often as it should." Emma set her coffee mug down carefully. "I had a lot of incentive to be coherent," she said. "Yes," Torres said, "but the incentive doesn't always produce the coherence. You did that." After she hung up, Emma stood in her kitchen for a long time. She thought about Ryan in federal custody. She thought about the version of herself who had stood frozen at a charity event watching him laugh. She thought about the distance between that woman and this one. She picked up her phone and called Maggie. "Ryan was arrested this morning," she said when Maggie answered, a sharp intake of breath. "Emma." "I'm okay," Emma said. And this time when she said it, it was simply true. She saw Alexander for the first time since the restaurant in Wicker Park 4 days after Ryan's arrest. He called and asked if she was free Saturday afternoon. The directness of it was very like him. No elaborate setup, no performance of casualness, just, "Are you free Saturday afternoon?" She said yes. He gave her an address. It was a house in Lincoln Park, not the address she might have expected from a man with his resources, not a fortress or a statement, but a large, solid, clearly lived-in house on a tree-lined street. The kind of house that said people actually live here. She rang the doorbell. He answered the door himself, which she noticed, and he looked different than he had at either of the other times she'd seen him. Still himself. Still that quality of contained presence that she'd clocked across a crowded room 3 weeks ago. But something in the architecture of his face had changed. Something around his eyes. Not softer exactly, more present, like a man who had been operating at a certain remove from his own life and had recently been allowed back in. "Come in," he said. She came in. The sound hit her immediately, not loudly, but unmistakably. A child's voice somewhere deeper in the house, talking with the specific, urgent enthusiasm of a 5-year-old who has recently rediscovered the safety of narrating everything around him. Emma could not make out the words, but she could hear the shape of them, the way children speak, when they are comfortable, when they feel seen, when they are no longer managing their own fear. "He's telling Sofia about a show he watched," Alexander said, following her attention. "He's been watching the same 3 episodes repeatedly. He finds he needs familiar things right now." "That makes complete sense," Emma said. She can recite it verbatim at this point, and she doesn't care at all, Alexander said, and the quality of that, the soft private pride of a man watching his sister love her son without condition, was something Emma felt as a physical sensation somewhere below her sternum. He led her to a sitting room that had the comfortable disorder of a house currently reorganizing itself around people it was happy to have back. There was a small sneaker on the floor near the door, a blanket on the couch that had been recently and hastily folded, a crayon on the coffee table. Emma sat down. Alexander remained standing for a moment, then sat across from her. He looked at her with the same quality of attention he'd always had, complete, unperformed, and said, "I need to tell you several things." "Okay," she said. "The first thing is that you should know Ryan has offered full cooperation with Torres in exchange for a reduced sentence. His attorneys confirmed this morning." He paused. "The things he's agreed to provide will close additional elements of the Navarro investigation. Some of the people further up the chain, people who ordered what happened to Sofia and Marco, will be reachable now." Emma nodded. "That's good," she said. Not because she felt warmly toward Ryan, because it was structurally good, because it meant the people who had actually designed the harm would face the consequence rather than sheltering behind the operational distance they'd maintained. "The second thing," Alexander said, "is about what I told you in this investigation, what I gave you to bring to Torres." Emma waited. "There were elements of what I knew," he said carefully, "that came from sources that Torres's investigation has now identified. When she traces the chain of how you obtained certain wire references, when she looks at the document I provided you with, which I told you to describe as something Ryan left behind." He stopped. "She's thorough. She will eventually identify the inconsistency." Emma had known this was possible. She had known it from the moment she decided to use the document. "What does that mean for me?" she asked. "It means Torres will have questions," he said. "Not accusations. Questions. She will want to know what your actual relationship was with the information source." He met her eyes. "I want you to tell her the truth." Emma blinked. "The truth?" "Yes, that a man you met at the charity event whose connection to the Romano family you became aware of provided you with documentation when you told him what you'd found in your own records. That you presented it the way you did because you had legitimate standing, and he did not." He paused. "Torres is pragmatic. She has the evidence. She has the charges. She has Ryan's cooperation. The question of how precisely the wire references arrived on her desk does not materially change any of that. But she will feel better knowing the truth, and you will feel better telling it." Emma looked at him. "You're telling me to be fully honest with a federal agent about my connection to a Romano." "I'm telling you to stop managing information on my behalf," he said. "You've been doing it since the moment you walked into Torres's office. I don't want that to be the basis of whatever this is." He paused. "You deserve to not be holding anything for me. Whatever this is." Emma sat with those 3 words for a moment. The careful imprecision of them. The way they gestured toward a thing without claiming it, leaving the shape of it for her to fill in, or decline to fill in, at her own pace and in her own time. "Okay," she said. "I'll tell her." "Good," he said. A silence opened between them. Not uncomfortable, but expectant. Like a room with furniture rearranged, where you can feel the new configuration before you've fully accounted for it. "The third thing," Alexander said. Emma raised her eyes. "Sofia wants to meet you." Emma stared at him. "She knows what you did," he said. "She knows the timeline. She knows that without what you brought Torres on Thursday, without the specific timing of it, the window she ran through on Friday morning would have been a wall. The people covering that location would have been in place. She would not have been able to run." He paused. "She asked me to arrange it, if you're willing." Emma thought about a woman who had spent 14 months memorizing information while she waited for a moment that might never come. A woman who had been told she was powerless and had quietly, steadily refused to believe it. "Yes," Emma said. "I'd like to meet her." Sofia Romano was 32 years old and looked in person startlingly like her brother, the same quality of contained presence, the same dark eyes that seemed to be taking in more than they revealed. But where Alexander's stillness was the stillness of someone who had spent years cultivating distance, Sophia's stillness was the stillness of someone who had survived something and was only now slowly allowing herself to occupy space again. She was sitting on the couch when Alexander brought Emma into the room. Marco was beside her, pressed against her arm, with the specific physicality of a child who intends to be in contact with his mother at all times until further notice. He glanced at Emma with large, serious eyes. Alexander's eyes exactly, and then looked back at the television, where the same 3 episodes of the same show were cycling. Sophia stood when Emma entered. She crossed the room and took Emma's hands in both of hers, and looked at her for a moment with an expression that Emma could not have described. Not gratitude exactly, not the version of it that was formal and managed. Something rawer than that. "He told me about the dress," Sophia said. Emma blinked. "I'm sorry. The charity event. The navy dress. Alexander told me you came across the room in a navy dress and asked him to kiss you." A pause. "He doesn't tell me things like that. He tells me operational facts, logistics. He told me about the dress." Emma was very aware of Alexander somewhere behind her. "I was desperate," Emma said honestly. "I know," Sophia said. "That's what he told me. He said you were desperate and honest at the same time, which he said was the rarest combination he'd met in a long time." She squeezed Emma's hands. "Thank you. I know that word is not. I know it doesn't cover it. But thank you." "You ran," Emma said. "I just helped change what was on the other side of the door. You're the one who memorized everything and waited and ran." Sophia looked at her for a long moment. "He said you'd say something like that," she said quietly. Then she let go of Emma's hands and went back to the couch and sat back down beside Marco, who immediately re-anchored himself to her arm. Emma turned. Alexander was watching her from across the room. She crossed to him. "You told her about the dress," Emma said quietly. "She asked about you," he said equally quietly. "What did she ask?" He looked at her steadily. "She asked if you were important." Emma felt her breath catch very slightly. "What did you tell her?" she asked. "I told her about the dress," he said. They talked for 3 hours that afternoon, the 4 of them, Alexander and Emma and Sophia and Marco, who eventually transferred his physical anchoring from his mother to the couch cushion between them, and from there gradually across the room, and eventually to the coffee table where Emma's hand was resting, which he touched very gently once, the way a child touches something they're curious about, before retreating back to his mother. Emma understood that. She had seen Lily do exactly that exploratory tentative reach towards something unfamiliar, pulling back to home base before trying again. She stayed for dinner because Sophia asked her to stay, and it would have felt wrong to refuse. Marco ate most of his food, and some of Alexander's, and fell asleep on the couch before 8, with his sneakers still on, which Sophia removed with the practiced efficiency of a mother reclaiming a skill she'd been denied for too long. After Marco was asleep, Sophia excused herself, not awkwardly, just with the directness of someone who knew what the room needed and was providing it. Emma and Alexander were alone. They sat in the comfortable disorder of the house, the sneaker still near the door, the crayon on the table, Marco asleep on the couch 10 feet away, and the silence between them had a different quality than any silence they'd shared before. Less structured, less managed. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "With the investigation. With Navarro." "Torres estimates another 4 to 6 months before charges reach the upper levels of the structure," he said. "With Ryan's cooperation, the timeline compresses. Some of the people who ordered what happened to Sophia, they're already in the federal crosshairs. It's a matter of building the case to the point where it holds." "And your business interests?" Emma asked carefully. "You mentioned the process of redirecting things." "Still in process," he said. "It was already underway before this." He paused. "What happened to Sophia accelerated certain decisions. I had already decided I wanted to build something that didn't require the kind of operational exposure that allowed someone like Ryan to be useful. He paused again. Exposure to leverage is a structural problem. I've been solving it structurally. Emma nodded. She thought about the way he had said that building something that didn't require. Not performing reform, not making promises about who he would become. Making structural decisions, solving problems. That was who he was. It was what she'd watched him do from the beginning. "There's something I want to ask you," he said. Emma looked at him. "The night of the charity event," he said. "After you went back to find your friend, what were you thinking about?" "You," Emma said without deliberating about it. "What you'd left out. What the pause meant." "Not the kiss." She considered. "The kiss was part of what I was thinking about," she said honestly. "But mostly I was thinking about the pause. The thing you didn't tell me. I'm always more interested in what people don't say than what they do." "I know," he said. "I realized that very quickly." "Realized? Is that why you texted me?" she asked. "The account. Don't let it go. Was that did you know then what I was or wasn't paying attention to?" "I thought you might be paying attention," he said. "I wasn't certain." He looked at her. "I'm rarely uncertain. I don't function well with uncertainty." "And yet," Emma said. "And yet," he said. Marco shifted in his sleep on the couch, some dream moving through him, and both of them looked at him for a moment. He settled. His breathing steadied. Emma looked back at Alexander. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to not respond to it immediately. I need you to just hear it." He held her gaze. "Okay. I didn't do any of this for you," she said. "I want to be completely clear about that. I did it because it happened in my life. Because Ryan used my accounts and my name and my marriage, and I was not willing to let that be the thing that defined what my marriage was. I was not willing to let the story of my own life be something that happened to me without my participation." She paused. "And I did it because there was a child. Because Marco was 5 years old and somewhere without his mother, and I have a daughter, and I couldn't not." "I know," he said. "But," Emma said. He was very still. "I also did it," she said, "because somewhere in the middle of all of it, I realized that the person I was talking to at 1 a.m. was someone I trusted, and that I hadn't trusted anyone with anything real in a very long time." She paused. "That mattered to me. The trusting, independently of everything else." A silence. "Emma," he said. "You said you weren't going to respond immediately." "I'm not responding to what you said," he said. "I'm saying your name because I've been trying not to say it too often, and I'm running out of reasons to restrain myself." She looked at him across the comfortable, ordinary disorder of his sister's returned life. "Say it then," she said. "Emma," he said again, and the way he said it the second time was different. Not a restraint releasing, but a decision being made. "I have not trusted anyone with anything real in longer than I'm willing to calculate. I have operated for years under the understanding that closeness is a liability, and that the people I care about are safest at a distance." He paused. "You walked up to me in a room full of people I've known for decades, and you were the first person in those decades who wanted nothing from me except a moment of not being broken in public. And I have been trying to manage what that did to me ever since." Emma didn't say anything. "I'm not good at this," he said. "I want to be honest about that. I'm not practiced at it, and I make decisions in ways that are not. I don't always explain my reasoning before I act on it, and I have a life that is still complicated in ways that are not fully resolved." He met her eyes. "But I want to try. If you're willing to understand that trying is what I'm offering, not a finished version." Emma looked at him for a long moment. "I rebuilt my entire life from nothing," she said. "I know how to work with unfinished." Something happened in his face. Not a smile, not quite, but something adjacent to it, something that lived in the same territory. "There's something else," he said. She waited. "Ryan's attorneys contacted my legal team today," he said. "Separate from the cooperation agreement with Torres." Ryan is claiming that you and I had a relationship prior to the charity event, that this was orchestrated, that you brought the documents to Torres as a deliberate act of sabotage on his life coordinated with me. Emma absorbed this. He's trying to damage my credibility as a witness. Yes. Does Torres believe him? Torres has indicated that Ryan's claims about your relationship with me are not relevant to the evidentiary value of what you provided, and that attempting to impugn a cooperative witness's motives when you're the subject of a federal fraud and conspiracy investigation is not a strong strategic posture. He paused. Her words were more formal than that, but that was the substance. Emma thought about Ryan trying even now to reshape the narrative, to recast himself as the victim of coordination rather than the subject of consequence. It was so perfectly him, so exactly the man she had spent 6 years not fully seeing, that she felt almost nothing about it. Just the clean recognition of a pattern she now understood entirely. Let him say what he wants, Emma said. The truth is what happened. I found the documents. I went to Torres. Everything in between is also true. She paused. And if Torres wants to ask me about the rest of it, about you, about what this is, I'll tell her that too. What will you tell her? Emma looked at him. I'll tell her I met a man at a charity event, she said, that he was honest with me when he didn't have to be, and I was honest with him when it would have been easier not to be, and that somewhere in the middle of trying to do the right thing, we found out we trusted each other. She paused. Which is true. It is, he said. I'll also tell her, Emma said, that I am not a woman who can be orchestrated, that anyone who knew me for more than 10 minutes would understand that. A pause. Which is also true. Also true, he said. Marco made a sound from the couch, not quite waking, just surfacing slightly. Both of them looked at him again. He settled deeper into the cushion, with the absolute trust of a child who knows he's somewhere safe. Emma watched him sleep. She thought about the photograph Alexander had put on the table in the Wicker Park restaurant. The serious little face. The cartoon dinosaur shirt. She thought about that version of him, and this version of him, the same child, but the weight in his body different now, the sleep different, the small fist uncurled. He looks like you, she said quietly. He looks like Sophia, Alexander said. He has your eyes, she said. A silence. I know, he said, and the quality of those 2 words was something she had never heard from him before. Stripped of all the management, all the containment. Just the plain full weight of a man feeling something he'd been prevented from feeling for a very long time. Emma didn't fill the silence. She let it be what it was. She called Torres on Monday morning. I want to clarify something from our Thursday meeting, she said when Torres answered. I'm listening, Torres said, Emma told her. She told her about Alexander. Not everything, not the operational details Torres didn't need restated, but the real shape of it. That she had met him at the charity event. That she had come to understand who he was. That when she went through her financial records and identified the inconsistencies, she had contacted him because she believed he could provide context she couldn't get elsewhere. That the wire reference document had come from him with the understanding that she had legal standing to present it in a way he did not. She said all of it cleanly and without apology and without hedging. Torres was quiet through most of it. She asked 2 clarifying questions at the end, both of which Emma answered directly. Then Torres said, Ms. Carter, I want to ask you something. Okay. Did you believe when you made the decision to come to us that you were doing the right thing? Emma didn't hesitate. Yes. And did you believe the information you were providing was accurate? Yes. Then I have what I need, Torres said. The framing of how documentation travels from source to witness is a matter my team manages routinely. What matters is that you were honest with me just now, and that the evidence holds, and that it does. A pause. You could have not called me this morning. I know, Emma said. Why did you? Emma thought about what Alexander had said. I don't want that to be the basis of whatever this is. She thought about what she'd said to him about trusting, about the 2 years of not trusting anyone with anything real. Because I'm done managing information for the sake of how it looks, Emma said. It cost me 2 years of not knowing the truth of my own life. I'm not doing that anymore. Torres made a small sound, the sound of someone filing something away, not professionally but personally. Understood, she said. She hung up. Emma sat in her car in the school pickup line she had called from her car, Lily's school day ending in 20 minutes, and felt the last tightly held thing in her chest release. Done. That was done. All of it out in the open, and the sky had not fallen, and Torres still had what she needed, and Emma was still herself. Still sitting in a 2019 Civic, in a school pickup line, still the woman who counted her dollars and raised her daughter, and had spent 3 weeks doing something that had felt at every step like the truest thing she had ever done. Her phone buzzed. Alexander. Not the unknown number anymore. She had saved the contact 3 days ago. Just his name. Torres called me, it said. You told her everything. Yes, Emma typed back. You didn't have to do that. I know. A pause. Then, thank you. She started to type, you're welcome, and stopped. She thought about what he'd said, that he had been trying not to say her name too often and was running out of reasons to restrain himself. She thought about Sophia saying he told me about the dress. She thought about the way he'd looked at Marco sleeping those 2 plain words. I know, with all the weight of everything he'd been carrying in them. She deleted you're welcome and typed instead, have dinner with me Thursday. Just dinner, somewhere ordinary. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. She watched the 3 dots appear. They disappeared. She picked up Lily, who climbed into the back seat with the energy of a child who had been sitting down all day and had opinions about volcanoes that required immediate and extended discussion. Emma drove and listened and asked questions and laughed in the right places and was completely, genuinely present in this ordinary, extraordinary life she had built. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. She didn't look at it until she was parked at home, Lily already running up the stairs ahead of her. It said, somewhere ordinary sounds exactly right. Emma stood on the sidewalk in front of her building and read that, and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Something uncomplicated and warm and entirely her own. Not relief. Not the absence of pain. Something forward-facing. She put her phone in her pocket and went upstairs to her daughter and her ordinary apartment and her basil plant on the windowsill, and she thought that 3 weeks ago she had walked into a room in a navy dress and grabbed a stranger's arm. And that stranger had grabbed back. And neither of them had let go. Thursday came in cold and clear, the way Chicago sometimes surprised you in early November. A sky so sharp and blue, it looked manufactured, the kind of day that made ordinary things feel slightly more vivid than they had any right to be. Emma stood in her bathroom at 6:15 in the morning, looking at herself in the mirror the way she had started doing recently, not critically, not with the inventory-taking quality she'd practiced for 2 years, cataloging what needed to be managed and minimized and held together. Just looking, getting acquainted with the woman looking back. She had changed. She could see it, and she didn't try to talk herself out of seeing it. Not physically, not in the ways that used to consume her attention in the bad months after the divorce, when she'd stood at this same mirror and found 1,000 small inadequacies to punish herself with. Something in the structure beneath the surface had shifted. Something in the set of her jaw. Something in the way she occupied the space she was standing in. Lily appeared in the doorway behind her, still in her pajamas. Hair catastrophic, holding the stuffed dinosaur she'd had since age 3. Are you going somewhere special tonight? Lily asked. Emma looked at her daughter in the mirror. I'm having dinner with a friend. The same friend as last time. Emma turned around. What do you mean last time? Lily gave her the patient look of a 7-year-old who believes adults are frequently behind. You've been on your phone different, she said. Like when you're happy about something but you don't want to be too happy yet because you're not sure. Emma stared at her daughter. Maggie says that's how you text when you like someone, Lily added helpfully. Maggie, Emma said with the specific tone she reserved for conversations she intended to have with Maggie at the earliest possible opportunity, talks too much. Lily considered this. Is he nice? Emma thought about Alexander Romano. She thought about a man who answered a stranger's impossible request without asking for anything in return. Who told her she wasn't allowed to call trust a character flaw? Who said her name like it was something he'd been conserving? "He's very honest," Emma said, "which is the nicest thing a person can actually be." Lily thought about this with the seriousness she applied to all important questions. "Does he know about volcanoes?" "I haven't asked him yet," Emma said. "You should ask him tonight," Lily said, and wandered back toward her room. Emma turned back to the mirror. She was smiling. The restaurant was in Ukrainian village, small, genuinely unpretentious. The kind of place where the tables were close enough together that you had to lean in to be heard, which forced a quality of attention that larger, more performatively casual restaurants couldn't manufacture. She had suggested it. He had looked it up and texted back perfect. She arrived first. This was intentional. She had thought about it, had thought about the fact that he always arrived first, always had the sight lines, always chose a position that gave him information before the other person could choose what to give him. She had decided with a quiet deliberateness that would have been entirely foreign to her 3 months ago to arrive first tonight. She sat down. She chose a chair that faced the door. When he walked in 6 minutes later and saw her already seated, already watching the entrance, already in possession of the room, something crossed his face. Quick, genuine, unmanaged. He had not expected it, and the not expecting had caught him with his guard down for exactly the 1 second it took for something real to show through. He crossed to the table and sat down. "You got here first," he said. "I did," she said. He looked at her with that expression she had come to understand meant he was recalibrating something. "You did that on purpose." "I did," she said again. He picked up the menu. She watched the corner of his mouth move in a way that was not quite a smile, but was definitely adjacent to one. "Fair," he said. They ordered. They talked. They did what two people do when they have been through something enormous together, and are now sitting across from each other in an ordinary restaurant, trying to figure out what the ordinary version of this looks like. It was not Emma found as strange as she'd expected. What she'd expected was a kind of tonal shift, that the removal of crisis would reveal an absence, the way you sometimes discover that a relationship that functioned beautifully under pressure has nothing to say in the quiet. What she found instead was that the quality of his attention did not change with the context. He was as present at this small table over pasta and wine as he had been at 1 a.m. talking through the shape of a federal case. He asked questions he actually wanted the answers to. He listened to the answers in the way she had come to understand, was simply how he listened completely, without the ambient half-attention of someone waiting for their turn to speak. She told him about Lily and the volcano drawings, which had now expanded from a single volcano into what Lily was calling a whole volcano island that occupied 6 taped-together sheets of paper on her bedroom floor. She told him about Maggie, who had demanded a complete accounting of everything that had happened over the last month and had responded to the full story with a silence of about 4 seconds, followed by, "I knew I should have introduced myself at that table." Alexander listened to all of this with evident attention and no performance of it. "She's right," he said. "You were fine. She would have complicated it." Emma laughed. "Don't ever tell her that. She'll take it as a compliment." "She should," he said. "Knowing when you'd complicate something and staying out of it is a significant skill." Emma looked at him across the table. "Your sister called me this morning," she said. Something in his expression shifted. "I know," she told me. "She asked if I wanted to bring Lily to the house on Saturday," Emma said. "To meet Marco." "I know," he said again. "Did you arrange that?" "No," he said. Then, "I told her about the volcano island. She made her own decisions." Emma sat with that for a moment. Sophia calling. Marco's serious eyes and exploratory touch. 2 children the same age, one of them interested in geology, and one of them still relearning how to be in a room with people he didn't know. "I said yes," Emma told him. "I hope that's all right." "It's more than all right," he said quietly. They stayed at the table for 3 hours. long past the point when the dinner was technically over, long past when the restaurant had cleared and refilled around them. Nobody rushed them. Emma suspected from the particular quality of the server's discretion that nobody at this restaurant would ever rush Alexander Romano. When they finally stood to leave, and he held her coat for her, the way someone does when it's both courtesy and something more, she turned to look at him. "I have to tell you something," she said. "Tell me," he said. "I'm scared," she said. "I want to be clear about that, not of you, not of this specifically. I'm scared in the general way of someone who trusted someone completely and was wrong, and who built a life out of the wreckage of being wrong, and who is now standing at the edge of trusting someone again and is very aware of what it cost the last time." He looked at her steadily. "I know," he said. "I'm telling you because I don't want to manage it," she said. "I spent 6 years in a marriage managing my own fear of being seen. I'm not doing that again." "Emma," he said. "I'm also telling you," she said, "because the fear doesn't change what I want. I just needed you to know both things exist at the same time." He looked at her for a long moment, that complete unperformed attention, and she let him look and did not fill the space with anything. "I'm going to earn it," he said. Not as a promise wrapped in performance. Just a statement of fact the way he stated all facts. Not in a single gesture, incrementally, the way trust actually works. "I know you will," she said. And the thing was, she did know. Not because she was naive, not because she had decided to believe out of hope rather than evidence. Because she had spent a month watching this man operate, watching him make choices under pressure, watching what he protected and what he disclosed, and when he told her difficult truths, even when easier options were available. She knew him. Not completely. You didn't know a person completely in a month, and she wasn't interested in the pretense of it, but she knew the parts that mattered most. The parts that didn't change under pressure. He walked her to her car. On the sidewalk in the cold November air, he took her hand. Not dramatically, not with preamble. Just reached over and took her hand the way someone does when they have decided to stop not doing it. Emma looked down at their hands, then up at him. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. She drove home with the heat on and the radio low, and something warm and solid settled in her chest, and she thought, this is what it feels like to choose something with your eyes open. The call from Torres came on a Tuesday, 6 weeks later. Emma was at her desk in the middle of writing copy for a client campaign that she was finding genuinely engaging for the first time in months. Engagement having returned to her professional life along with everything else. The way the appetite for ordinary things comes back once the emergency ends. She saw Torres's name on her phone and picked up immediately. "Ms. Carter, I want to give you an update on the status of the case." "Of course," Emma said. She pushed back from her desk slightly and kept her voice even. "Ryan Carter entered a formal plea this morning. Fraud conspiracy and as an accessory in the unlawful detention charges. He will be sentenced in approximately 4 months. Torres paused. "His cooperation has been comprehensive. The additional charges against upper-level Navarro principals were filed last week. 3 individuals who were directly involved in the planning of the action against Sofia Romano and her son have been arrested. Extradition proceedings are underway for a 4th. Emma closed her eyes briefly. "The case is substantially closed," Torres said. "There will be a trial. You may be called as a witness, which I want to prepare you for, but the core of the investigation, the part that required your cooperation, is complete." "Thank you," Emma said. "Ms. Carter." Torres's voice had the quality it sometimes had the quality of someone stepping slightly outside professional register into something more direct. "I've been doing this work for 16 years. Most of the witnesses I work with come to me because they have no other option. They come because they're subpoenaed, or because they're afraid, or because someone told them they had to." A pause. "You came because you decided it was right. And you came with more preparation and more evidence and more clarity about what you were giving me than witnesses twice your age with attorneys present." Another pause. "I want you to know that that's not common, and it mattered." Emma sat at her desk in the ordinary fluorescent light of her office. "A child came home," she said. "That's what mattered." "Yes," Torres said. "But he came home on that particular Friday and not months later because of the timing of what you brought me. I think you should know that." She told Alexander that evening. They had settled into something over the 6 weeks since the Thursday dinner. Not a formal arrangement, not a declaration, but a texture of regular contact that had become, without either of them announcing it, the new normal. He called on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She texted him when Lily said something that needed to be shared immediately. He had come to her apartment for dinner twice, which Lily had treated with the scientific scrutiny she applied to new variables, observing Alexander with narrow eyes from across the table, before determining, apparently, that he met her requirements, at which point she had explained the entire volcano island to him in exhaustive detail. He had listened with complete attention and asked 2 follow-up questions that Lily clearly found satisfying because she had turned to Emma afterward with an expression that said acceptable. Emma had pressed her lips together and looked at the ceiling. When she told him about Torres's call that evening, they were on the phone Tuesday, and she heard him go quiet in the specific way he went quiet when something landed. "It's over," she said. "Formally." "Yes," he said. "How does that feel?" A pause. "Ask me in a month," he said. "I've been in motion for so long I need to be still for a while before I know what the stillness feels like." "That's honest," she said. "I'm trying," he said. "You told me it was the nicest thing a person could be." "I said that to Lily," Emma said. "Were you there?" "She told Sophia," he said. "Sophia told me." Emma laughed. "That family has no sense of private information." "We're working on it," he said, and she could hear the warmth in it, the specific private warmth of a man who had his family back and had not yet finished being grateful for it. The twist came on a Thursday morning 42 days after the case closed. Emma was at her desk when her phone rang. Not Torres, not Alexander, not Maggie. A number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Is this Emma Carter?" "Yes." "Ms. Carter, my name is Daniel Reeves. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Marcus Navarro." Emma went very still. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "Marcus Navarro, the Navarro Capital Group." "Yes. Mr. Navarro passed away last week. He suffered a cardiac event while in federal custody." A pause. "I'm calling because Mr. Navarro left specific testamentary instructions that included your name." Emma stared at the wall of her office. "I think you have the wrong person," she said. "Emma Carter, formerly." Emma Carter née Hale, married to Ryan Carter, account holder at First Midwest Bank, account number ending in 4471. He read the number. It was her joint account number, the account Ryan had used. "That is you. That's me," Emma said in a voice that did not entirely belong to her. "Mr. Navarro was apparently aware of your role in the federal investigation," the attorney said. "He left instructions indicating that certain assets held under the Navarro Capital Group assets derived from transactions that passed through your personal accounts without your knowledge or consent should be returned to you in the event of his death if the investigation concluded in the manner it did." Emma put her hand flat on her desk. "What assets?" she said. The attorney told her. She sat in silence for 30 seconds after he finished talking. "That can't be right," she said. "The valuation was calculated based on the amount that passed through your accounts, compounded over the period of unauthorized use with a multiplier Mr. Navarro specified in the instructions," the attorney said. "His exact words in the document which I am reading to you now were, 'The woman whose account was used without her knowledge should be compensated, not for what was taken, but for what was possible, had it never been taken.'" A pause. "He appears to have been aware of the specifics of your situation." Emma pressed her fingers over her mouth. Marcus Navarro, the man who had built the organization that had used Ryan to hurt Sophia and Marco, who had spent the last months of his life in federal custody, had known her name, had known her account number, had left her instructions. She did not know what to do with that. She genuinely did not know what to do with the fact that a man she had thought of as a structural villain in a story she'd been caught inside had also at some point made a decision that looked in its specifics remarkably like an attempt at restitution. She called Alexander the moment she hung up. She told him everything. He listened without interrupting, which was how he always listened. When she finished, there was a silence. "Did you know?" she asked. "Did you know he knew who I was?" "No," Alexander said. "I didn't know." A pause. "But it doesn't surprise me entirely." "Why not?" "Because Marcus Navarro was a man who built a criminal organization and also sent his sister to medical school and funded 3 community health clinics on the South Side," Alexander said quietly. "He was not a simple person. People rarely are." He paused. "What are you going to do?" Emma had been thinking about this since the moment the attorney said the number. "I'm going to take it," she said. "Not because I think it fixes what happened, not because I think it redeems anything or anyone, but because it did come through my accounts. It did pass through my life without my permission. And I have a daughter, and I have been counting every dollar for 2 years. And I am not going to refuse money that is legally and morally mine because the origin is complicated." "Good," Alexander said without hesitation. "You're not going to tell me to be careful. I'm going to tell you that you just made the decision a woman who has fully reclaimed her own life makes," he said, "without asking anyone's permission, without second-guessing your right to it." A pause. "I don't need to tell you to be careful. You know how to be careful. What you needed to learn was how to not be only careful." Emma sat at her desk and felt the particular sensation of being seen accurately, not flattered, not managed, but actually seen. "I learned it," she said. "Yes," he said, "you did." She told Lily 6 weeks later. Not about all of it. Not the Navarro money, or the federal case, or the specific shape of how the last 4 months had unfolded. Lily was 7. What Lily needed was the version that was true and age-appropriate and that honored her intelligence without loading her with complexity she couldn't yet carry. She told her that something bad had happened a long time ago when Mommy and Daddy were married, that some people had done wrong things that hurt other people and that Mommy had helped fix some of it. That because of that, they were going to have more breathing room now. That Lily could stay at her school and they didn't have to move, and maybe this summer they could take a trip somewhere Lily wanted to go. Lily listened to this with her serious face on. "Did you fix it because of your friend?" she asked. "Partly," Emma said. "We helped each other." Lily considered this. "Like a team." "Like a team," Emma said. "Is he going to be around more?" Lily asked. With the directness of a child who has identified the actual question and sees no reason not to ask it. Emma looked at her daughter 7 years old, sharper than anyone gave her credit for watching her mother, with eyes that had always taken in more than Emma expected. "I think so," Emma said. "If that's okay with you." Lily thought about this for what was by Lily's standards a very long time. "He knows about volcanoes," she said finally. "That's important." "It is," Emma agreed very seriously. "Okay," Lily said with the decisiveness of someone closing a board meeting, and went back to her drawing. The Saturday that Marco and Lily met was a day that Emma would carry for the rest of her life, not as a dramatic memory, but as a quiet one, the kind that doesn't announce its significance while it's happening. The children regarded each other for the first 10 minutes with the mutual wariness of small people who have been told they will like each other and are reserving judgment. Marco was quieter in person than Lily. Smaller in his gestures, more contained the residue of a year of needing to be invisible, still in his body, even as Sophia's patient, constant presence worked at loosening it. Lily solved the problem the way Lily solved most problems, by talking. She sat down next to Marco on the living room floor and opened her folders she had brought. The Volcano Island all 6 taped-together sheets rolled carefully and carried in a cardboard tube, and she spread it out in front of him and began to explain. Marco did not speak for a long time. He looked at the Volcano Island with the focused attention of a child encountering something genuinely interesting. and he listened to Lily explain the lava flows and the fictional scientist character who lived at the base of the main volcano, and was not afraid. Then he pointed at something on the drawing and said in a small but certain voice, "What's that?" "That's the lava tube," Lily said without missing a beat. "It goes underground. That's how the volcano breathes." Marco considered this. Volcanoes breathe. In a way, Lily said with complete authority. The hot stuff moves inside and has to go somewhere. It's like pressure. Everything that builds up inside has to come out eventually. Emma, from across the room where she was sitting with Alexander and Sophia, watched her 7-year-old daughter explain pressure dynamics to a 5-year-old boy who had spent 14 months under a different kind of pressure entirely. Alexander was watching too. His shoulder was against Emma's. The contact was light and unannounced, the way it had started to be unceremonious, like something that had simply settled into place. Sophia leaned over from Emma's other side and said quietly, "He hasn't initiated a conversation with someone new since he came home." Emma watched Marco point at another part of the drawing. She watched Lily answer. She watched something in Marco's shoulders change by about 5 degrees, a softening so slight she might have missed it if she hadn't been paying attention. She had been paying attention to a lot of things lately. The sentencing was in February. Emma did not go. Torres had told her she didn't need to be present, and she had made the deliberate choice to not organize her day around Ryan Carter's consequence. She had done what she needed to do. What happened in that courtroom was the formal conclusion of something that had been concluded for Emma months before. She was at work when Torres texted her 8 years. No possibility of parole for the first 4. He allocated fully. Emma read the message at her desk. She thought about 8 years. She thought about what Ryan would be when he came out 51 years old, the life he'd constructed entirely dismantled the ease of him having nowhere left to operate. She thought about who she would be by then. Lily would be 15. The thought was almost abstract. She did not feel triumph. She had expected to feel something more charged, and she found instead a kind of finality, clean and quiet like the last page of a chapter that had been running too long. She texted back, "Thank you for telling me." Then she put her phone away and went back to work. That evening, Alexander came over for dinner. He did that now had a key which Emma had given him 3 weeks ago in the most understated exchange possible, handing it to him in the hallway while Lily was in the bathroom and saying, "So you don't have to wait in the cold," and him taking it without making a production of it, which was exactly the right response. He was already in this kitchen when she got home, which she had started to find one of the most specifically comforting things in her current life. The evidence of another person in her space, a presence she had chosen that had chosen her back. Lily was at the kitchen table doing homework with the focused misery of a child encountering long division for the first time. "She needs help," Alexander said without turning from the stove. "She won't ask for it." "I'm fine," Lily said in the exact tone Emma used when she was not fine. Emma set her bag down and sat next to her daughter and looked at the problem. "Show me where you're stuck." "All of it," Lily said. Alexander kept cooking. Emma walked Lily through long division. The apartment was warm. Something on the stove smelled extraordinarily good. Emma thought, "This is what I built. This specific ordinary thing. She thought I built it from the rubble of something that almost destroyed me, and I built it better than what I had before. And I did not do it alone, but I am the reason it exists." She thought about the woman who had stood frozen at a charity event watching her ex-husband laugh. The woman who had trembled in the bathroom at work. The woman who had sat at her kitchen table at midnight and looked at a text from an unknown number and felt the ground shifting. She was still that woman. She had not replaced her, but she had added to her, had built forward from her layer by layer, choice by choice, truth by truth. Lily got the long division problem right on the second try. "I did it," she said with the exhilarated disbelief of someone who had not been certain they could. "You did," Emma said. Lily looked at her answer for a moment, then looked up at Alexander. "Did you watch?" "I watched," he said. "Was it good?" "It was very good," he said. Lily nodded with satisfaction and moved on to the next problem. Emma looked across the kitchen at Alexander. He looked back at her, the same look that had started across a crowded charity event 4 months ago, direct, complete, unperformed. But it was different now. It had been added to the way she had. It had the weight of 4 months of choosing each other consciously, incrementally, in the specific way trust actually works. 3 months later, they were standing in the same restaurant, Meridian. Same Gold Coast building, same tables. Different season. The city outside the windows was sliding toward spring, the lake losing its gray winter severity. The charity event that had brought Emma here the first time was a lifetime ago. Tonight, they were here because Sophia had organized a dinner for the people who had been part of what she called in her direct way, the month that changed everything, herself, and Marco Alexander, and Emma Maggie, even Torres, who had come in civilian clothes and looked oddly human without the legal pad. Marco was wearing a shirt with a dinosaur on it. Not a cartoon this time, a scientific illustration of a stegosaurus. Lily had selected it. They had gone shopping together with Sophia the previous weekend, which had resulted in Marco owning 3 new shirts with different scientific illustrations, and Lily acquiring detailed knowledge of Cretaceous period herbivore defense mechanisms. Emma stood near the window with Alexander looking out at the city. "You know what I keep thinking about," she said. "Tell me," he said. "That I almost didn't come that night," she said. "Maggie had to stand in my bedroom doorway for 20 minutes before I put on the dress." She looked at the city below. "I was so sure there was nothing in that room for me." "There wasn't, technically," he said. "What was in that room was accidental." "You were in that room," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Also accidental." "Not entirely," she said. "You chose to say yes." "You chose to ask," he said. Emma looked at the room. Sophia at the table leaning close to Marco to say something that made him smile. Maggie talking to Torres with animated gestures that Torres was receiving with what appeared to be genuine amusement. The room full of the specific warmth of people who had been through something together and had ended up against odds here. She thought about what she'd said to Maggie 4 months ago, standing on the sidewalk outside this same building. Some things that start as accidents don't stay accidents. "I need to tell you something," Alexander said. She turned to look at him. "I've been working with my legal team for the last 6 weeks," he said. "The final transition of the last operational elements, the last pieces that aren't fully legitimate, closes at the end of this month." He met her eyes. "It's done. Everything I told you I was building, it's built." Emma looked at him. "You didn't have to do that for me," she said. "I know," he said. "I did it because it was the right decision and because I had run out of reasons not to make it." He paused. "You were not the reason. You were the reason I ran out of other reasons." She understood the distinction. She appreciated the distinction. "What does that mean for you?" she asked. "Who are you without—" "Exactly what I said I would be," he said. "Real estate, logistics, private finance." A pause, the smallest possible pause. "Among other things." Emma looked at him steadily. "No pause this time." He almost smiled. "No pause." She turned back to the window for a moment. Chicago spread out below in the early spring dark, the lake a vast presence at the edge of everything, the city humming with its enormous ordinary life. She thought about what she'd been afraid of 4 months ago. The fear she'd told him about on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, the specific fear of someone who had trusted fully and been wrong, standing at the edge of trusting again and knowing the cost. The fear had not gone away entirely. She didn't think it would not completely, and she had stopped expecting it to. What had changed was her relationship to it. The fear lived in her now, the way a healed bone carries the memory of a fracture, present, informative, not in control. She was not someone the fear could stop anymore. "I want to ask you something," she said. "Ask me," he said. She turned to look at him. "The night I came up to your table, before I said anything in the second before I spoke, what did you think was going to happen?" He looked at her. "I didn't know. You were unreadable." "I was terrified," she said. "I know that now," he said. "I didn't know it then. Then I just knew you were something I hadn't encountered before in that room or any room. Someone who was exactly as they appeared to be." He paused. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. "What were you looking at?" she said. He held her gaze. "Someone who was going to matter," he said simply. Emma looked at him. This man who had caught her when she grabbed his arm in a desperate moment, who had held on through everything that followed, who had been honest with her when it was hard, and trusted her when it was harder, who had cried, holding his nephew, and built something new because a future worth having required it. She thought about Lily saying he knows about volcanoes, that's important. She thought about Sophia saying he told me about the dress. She thought about 2 years of rebuilding, and 1 month of choosing, and a lifetime of ordinary, extraordinary days ahead. She reached over and took his hand, the same way he had taken hers on the sidewalk in November, without preamble, without performance. Just a decision she was done not making. "Good," she said. "Because you matter too." And across the room, Marco looked up from the table to find his mother, the way he did every few minutes. Still the reflex of a child, relearning safety, and Sophia was right there exactly where she was supposed to be, and he turned back to his food, with the satisfied expression of someone who has confirmed the world is still in order. And Maggie caught Emma's eye from across the room, and raised her glass very slightly, the way old friends do when they're watching each other land somewhere good. And Alexander's hand was warm and certain in Emma's. And the city moved below them, vast and humming and indifferent in the way cities are carrying a million other stories in every direction. But this particular story that had started with a trembling woman and a stranger and 3 whispered words. This one had found its shape. Not a perfect shape, not a finished shape, but a true one built from honesty and bad luck, and 2 people who had both been through the kind of loss that either breaks you into pieces or breaks you open, and who had chosen separately, and then together to be broken open instead. Emma Carter had walked into a room 4 months ago, looking for one borrowed moment of not being broken. She had walked out with the rest of her life, and she had built every piece of it herself, with clear eyes, steady hands, and the hard-won knowledge that the bravest thing a person can do is reach for something real when everything that came before has taught them to expect less. She had reached, and this time what she caught was hers to keep.